representative and what would not be representative of the population.
All right, Professor Dennis Coronacion, let's go to you now. The coming elections will be a first under this pandemic that has changed our lives greatly over the last 2 years. Will this health crisis be a factor when Filipinos cast their vote on May 9th?
Well, actually, this is already the second time that we're going to hold an election during the pandemic. The first one was back in 2019, and that's for the midterm elections. But this is the first time during the pandemic that we're going to hold a presidential and vice presidential elections. Now, the health crisis is going to be, I think, a determinant, in selecting the leaders, our next set of leaders, since the pandemic has really wrought havoc to our country, and it has not affected, it has not only affected our health, but as well as its adverse impact has been felt on other areas, such as the economy.
That's right. Okay, we have so much more to talk about. You are watching a special presentation of CNN Philippines on the vice presidential race. We'll be back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Makakatulong sa presidente, whatever the project na kailangan na talaga para makaahon tayo sa magkaroon ng progreso ang bansa, kailangan ng support ng lahat, pati ng Senado.
Alam niya lahat ng dapat gawin. Yung di niya pinapabayaan yung bansa niya. Pag may mga problema, aktibo, yun ang the best. Yung makita niya lahat yung kapakanan ng butante, na pantay-pantay sana ang pagtingin nila. Para sa ganon, umunlad naman tayo.
Yung kikilos at tatalima sa mga panuntunan ng pamahalaan. Dapat doon tayo sa patuloy na sa ikabubuti ng bayan para maging progresibo. Hindi yung mema lang.
Naasahan natin dyan, paularin yung Pilipinas pa rin. Katulong ng presidente, hindi naman po pwedeng presidente lang gumalaw.
Sure ka ba talaga dito?
Ano ka ba? Mabait si Papa. Pa! Si Pinky po.
Paano po, Mr. Fardo? Please, call me sir.
Aba, laki ng supermarket dito ah. Bili tayo ng drinks. Ako na po ang drinks. Sige na. Gutom na ako. Kuha na mga kami, Mike. Sold. Paano? Pabiyahe pa tayo.
Sir, hatid ko na po kayo.
Central Hub yan. Develop na tong part ng Tarlac ah.
Sir, sagot ko na po ito.
Tingin mo sa akin. Cheap?
Sir, hindi po.
Joke lang.
Sir, pwede na po ako.
Thanks. Next time ulit. Miggy.
Max Fun! Woo!
Uy! May free delivery!
Basta McDo Free Delivery, di kailangan pag-isipan. Diretso na sa new McDelivery app.
Sarap! Download now!
Maraming driver na nakadilipid dahil sa kanilang energy ability.
Gamit ay sasakyang matipid, bawas konsumo ng gas o diesel.
Energy ability ang ginagawa. Plus,
Sasakyang energy efficient equals
energy efficient transportation.
Project finish!
Ang purpose ng dessert, i-reward ang masipag with layers of sarap.
In-Nestle All-Purpose Cream mo. Para rich, thick, and creamy.
Reward ready!
Nestle All-Purpose Cream.
In everything you do, make sure you choose what's true.
We always follow our hearts, so true adventures come our paths.
Dreams and aspirations, giving spark to all our passions.
Stay true and you'll know what to do.
And choose the bonds that are true.
We choose what's true.
Welcome back to the program. In a few moments, CNN Philippines will be holding our vice presidential debate with 7 of the 9 candidates in this year's polls. Let's get the latest situation from the University of Santo Tomas, where the debate will take place. Our David Santos and Trisha Terada now join us live from inside the Quadricentennial Pavilion. And let's start with you, David. This vice presidential debate will be without people in attendance. It has got to be different from the ones we've had in the past. What is it like on the ground right now?
Well, Ria, it's going to be very different. We were here in the exact same spot in 2016. This part of the bleacher was filled with people at that time, around this hour, mostly candidates' supporters. Now, the bleachers are now virtually empty. It will be interesting how this will play out. I mean, having a big live audience back in 2016 had its pros and cons. On the upside, it can test the candidate's character on stage, especially when he or she was being booed or heckled. Now, you get to see how they react or how they manage to retain grace and composure amid intense pressure. On the downside, noise and interruptions from a huge crowd can also be distracting and disruptive, and it can affect the candidate's train of thought or his or her arguments. Now, we saw that happen to then Vice Presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos during the 2016 VP debates. He was interrupted several times by heckling, to which some pundits said somehow affected his performance that time. Now, well, we don't see this happening this time. There will be a limited number of people watching the debates live, mostly members of the candidates and entourage, as well as observers from the Commission on Elections. But not only there is a significantly smaller crowd in the audience, cheering and heckling will also be discouraged. I guess the only time there will be cheering is when the candidates will be introduced on stage and when the debate ends. Otherwise, the live audience here will have to remain silent throughout this 2-hour showdown. Now, Microsoft Philippines is introducing a technological innovation for these back-to-back debates, the virtual audience. For that, it is tapping the Microsoft Teams technology, a platform, it says, with about 270 million users globally every month. Now, for this afternoon, 300 team users from different parts of the country, as well as cross-section of the society like women and youth groups, the LGBT, PWD, the academe, will be joining the debate remotely from the comforts of their homes or wherever they are now. Now, all these precautions, of course, are in compliance with the government's safety protocols amid this pandemic, Ria.
All right, well, this race has been remarkably stable so far, with Sara Duterte seeming to be the constant frontrunner in the surveys. But a debate always has the opportunity to upend things, especially since the frontrunner is going to skip this debate, and it seems even the future debates. So, Trisha, let's go to you. Where is Mayor Sara Duterte today? Do we know that? And what do we know about why she refuses to attend the debates?
Well, Ria, what we know so far is that Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio is in Pagadian City doing her rounds of her campaign. And what we also know is that Mayor Lito Atienza won't make it today because of medical reasons. Well, as far as Duterte Carpio is concerned, we've been asking her camp for a reason why they couldn't make it. But until now, as of today, we do not have that explanation from Duterte Carpio's camp. Ria?
All right, of course, you know, as I said earlier, we are still in the middle of the pandemic, so there are certain health protocols in place for the debate. For example, there will be no handshakes between the candidates or the hosts. David, what else should we know about the safety and security measures? And also, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the format and what to expect from this afternoon's debate and what it will look like.
Well, if you can see behind me, the limited seats on the floor are strategically placed so people will be spaced out inside this auditorium. Prior to coming on stage, the candidates and their entourage were ushered to separate rooms at the Father Roque Ruyano building just across this debate hall. That sort of served as their bubble prior to this debates, although I understand Doc Willie Ong and his wife visited the room of Senator Kiko Pangilinan shortly after their arrival here at UST. Now, everybody needs to present a negative COVID test result as well as their vaccination cards. Mask wearing is compulsory. Trisha and I are standing several meters away from the debate floor, so we can take off our masks for the meantime, but we will have to put it on back again later when the debate starts. Now, the only exceptions for masks wearing are the 9 people who will be on the stage. There are CNN anchors Rico Hizon and Ruth Cabal, who will serve as this afternoon's moderators, and then the 7 presidential candidates appearing this afternoon. Spots will be kept for Sara Duterte and Lito Atienza, who are both not participating today. The candidates will be given a minute and 30 for their opening and closing statements. They will also have a minute and 30 to respond to questions during the debate proper, and another minute for rebuttal and counter rebuttal. They will battle it out on different segments with carefully selected topics from the pandemic, the economy, foreign policy, corruption, among other big issues, Ria.
All right, Trisha, let's talk strategy and preparations. What do you know about how the candidates are getting ready for this debate, and what will their strategies be this afternoon?
Well, you know, Ria, although Mayor Sara Duterte is not around, some say that her absence itself could be a strategy. As what I've said, there is no clear reason why she didn't take part in this event, although it's not required and she is campaigning somewhere else. We've seen how debates in the past have made an impact in a candidate's survey ranking, so her decision not to appear in the debate could be a strategy in itself. As for other candidates, Soto says there will be no frills from his end. Pangilinan says he will continue to focus on highlighting the country's problems and presenting concrete solutions. Ong says he is preparing, or he has been preparing for this since 2019 by studying the issues, but he insists he's not going into political bickering. He says he banks on his image as a doctor who gives advice and tips. Candidate Rizalito David, meanwhile, says he's very much ready to talk about, quote-unquote, the message of greatness that Filipinos deserve. And, you know, Ria, let's just highlight this because one very clear example of debates actually upending things would be the 2016 elections. Both President Duterte and Vice President Leni Robredo were not survey frontrunners in the beginning. Duterte nailed the top spot in April at that time when most presidential debates had concluded. So as for Vice President, it was candidate Cheese Escudero who led the surveys at the start, with Marcos as the close second, who would eventually overtake him. Meanwhile, if we look at both the SWS and Pulse Asia surveys in 2016, Robredo had steady but slow increases, with her numbers soaring after the April 10 vice presidential debates. By the last SWS survey, that sometime in May 1 to 3 of 2016, Robredo and Marcos's numbers were so close. Robredo had 28% and Marcos got 29%. Many experts at that time would attribute the sudden peak in Robredo's numbers in her performance in the VP debate. So this time around, a lot of political experts and analysts would say it's still premature to determine who's going to win the elections based on the current surveys that we have, because a lot can still happen, and among those would have to do with how the candidates will perform during the debates. So it's really interesting how their strategies would really come into play in later's debate. Ria?
All right, thanks for that. That was David Santos and Trisha Terada reporting to us live from inside the Quadricentennial Pavilion in UST, the venue of the CNN Philippines vice presidential and presidential debates. Now, COMELEC has approved CNN Philippines' request for accreditation for its vice presidential and presidential debates this weekend. The approval came during the COMELEC's en banc session on Thursday. And now, let's see some comments from netizens. Our Paulo Abrera now joins us for a look. Paulo, what are people saying?
Well, thanks, Ria. Now, we asked netizens, if you had a chance to ask our vice presidential candidates a question, what would it be? We've got quite a selection here that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be starting with some comments here from Facebook. Sophia Gara asked to all the candidates, how will you ensure that Philippines will be in good hands if you win the election, especially during COVID crisis and economic fail? Okay, on Ana Oconer over here, also on Facebook, all candidates have big plans to address the problems of the country. Where will you plan to get the funding to support them, she asks. Do you have concrete plans for this? So that's another interesting question here. Please avoid giving mother statements such as unity and by stopping corruption. How will you ensure the sustainability of your solutions and ensure that they are safe from being politicized? Another question here, or rather, question thrown from Facebook from Chloe Go. Almost every candidate who ran for office promised to rid the government of corruption, yet corruption still prevails. What concrete action steps can they take to get rid of the government of corruption once and for all? We need detailed action plans that are implementable. Moreover, we know that a lot of corruption and red tape happens at the local level in LGUs. She continues on, but we'll move on rather to Charles here from Twitter asks, what is trust for you? As we are now living in a time where more and more people in a daily basis is losing their trust with the government. With that, how do you think you could regain that trust, especially if you are elected? All right, we have another comment here from Twitter. Tyrant asks, how do you vision the country to be like after you leave the office in 6 years? And finally, rounding off our selection here, back to Facebook, Orly Villanueva asks, will you continue the programs of Office of VP? Should you win as VP, what will you likely keep and enhance, and what will you discontinue, and why? How will you implement these programs, and what are your priorities? All right, that is the current pulse of the netizens. Now, those are the questions that they are asking. It'll be interesting to see what will be on their minds post-debate. That's what we've got for you. Back to you, Rhea.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Paolo. Now, you are watching a special presentation of CNN Philippines on the vice presidential race. We will be back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Sure ka ba talaga dito?
Ano ka ba? Mabait si Papa. Pa! Si Miggy po.
Paano po, Mr. Fardo?
Please, call me sir. Aba, laki ng supermarket dito ah. Bili tayo ng drinks. Ako na po ang drinks. Sige na. Gutom na ako. Kuha na mga kami, Mike. So, paano? Mabiyahe pa tayo.
Sir, hatid ko na po kayo.
Central Hub yan. Develop na tong part ng Tarlac ah.
Sir, sagot ko na po ito.
Tingin mo sa akin. Cheap?
Sir, hindi po.
Joke lang.
Sir, pwede na po ako.
Thanks. Next time ulit. Miggy.
Max Fun! Woo!
New Carnation Evap, the cooking milk na Chef. Angat sa milky namnam with more milk. Kaya ang sarap at confidence. Chef, New Carnation Evap.
Cooking milk.
Suki, siya ang bagong siga ng Senado, General Eleazar.
Siga? Paano sa pelikula?
Tunay na siga si General Eleazar.
Sipag at galing. Sipag sa pangreforma ng PNP. Galing sa paglaban sa krimen.
Bugok at abusado, kalaboso!
Inalaban niya tayo.
Marami tayong ilalaban para sa Pilipino, lalo na sa peace and order at seguridad para umangat ang ekonomiya. Dahil ang laban nyo, laban ko.
General Eleazar, iboto, Senador 23 sa balota.
Lazada 3 birthday opening sale. 1 month celebration with free shipping. Flash sales at Piso Deals. 3 birthday opening sale.
Starts March 3 to 7.
Lazada.
Mga mommies, gawing all-in-wonderful ang tortang talong. With Maggi Magic Sarap, may sarap at aroma ng dagdag onion at garlic, real meat at spices. With Maggi Magic Sarap, nasa kaway mong sarap ng buhay.
Welcome back. The CNN Philippines vice presidential debate will be happening in just a few minutes with the help of our partners, the University of Santo Tomas, the venue of our debate, and Microsoft Philippines, who made it possible for us to participate in the event virtually through its state-of-the-art technology. And we still have with us our panel of experts. Just a few more questions before we go. Now, Professor Lavinia, how can a VP make himself or herself relevant other than just, as you said, you know, their job is really to wait for the president to die or become incapacitated or resign or be pushed out of power? How can they make themselves relevant?
Well, ideally, the vice president should get a cabinet job and head an office. And that office gets a special quality because it's the vice president. So when VP Binay was head of the housing departments, it did very well. You know what I mean? When President Estrada was the vice president of FVR, he did also the crime commission. But if it's not possible, like we have in President Duterte, because inexplicably he didn't want to deal with the vice president, at least over all the 6 years. It was a short period. He worked with her. Then the vice president rises up to the occasion, and VP Robredo really rose to the occasion and had his own programs. Because the vice president, even if he's not constitutionally has any job, still represents the country, still represents the government for most people.
Right. It's really up to them how they want to carve out that role for
VP
themselves.
Robredo did a very good job, even without being a cabinet member.
All right, lastly, let's go to Mr. Holmes. Now, since our system elects a vice president separate from the president, how do the numbers of the VP affect their presidential running mate, if at all? All right, sir, I think you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
We have not seen, except for one election where the tandem won. I think it's the structure of the ballot basically that compels people to select VPs and president separately. What's quite distinct now is that I've seen most of the campaigns, except for one tandem, it's always the president and the vice president together. So maybe there's a higher proportion now of people who may support the vice president who would also extend support to their presidential running mate. That we will see, of course, not just in surveys, but on May 9.
All right, thank you for that, Ronald Holmes, the president of the survey group Pulse Asia, and constitutional analyst Professor Tony Lavinia. Professor Dennis Coronacion will join us again later when we recap the vice presidential debate. In a few minutes, 7 of the 9 vice presidential candidates will weigh in on some of today's most pressing issues at the CNN Philippines vice presidential debate live from UST. I'm Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. We'll be back after the debate to break down the highlights.
Debates for. Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question.
On February 27, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land. They have confirmed they're attending, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability. Side by side, on one stage, on one network.
and make a difference.
This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Voters are looking for the country's next leader. Seven candidates for vice president standing side by side.
To face the Filipino people.
Filipinos are not that foolish. We are going to do that by taxing the rich.
Kung saan natin dadali ng bayan, doon nating idisenyo ang ating edukasyon.
To make their case.
To explain and defend their positions on public issues.
To be challenged.
Kung susubukan niyo ako, magugulat kayo.
Uunahin natin ang agrikultura at pangingisda.
And to challenge each other.
But more than just telling us what they can do.
Isang batas na nagpapatawag na isang constitutional convention.
Yun din ang gusto namin kasama sa programa namin sa gobyerno. Gawing madisiplina uli ang gobyerno.
It's about how they can do it all during their 6-year term.
And if the need arises,
to be ready to step up as chief executive under the country's presidential line of succession. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a CNN Philippines special presentation, The Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022. I'm Rico Hizon.
magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako si Ruth Cabal and welcome to all of you watching on TV and on Facebook. Syempre Rico, batiin din natin ang ating virtual audience sa ating naglalakihang screens. Marami dyan mula pa sa iba't ibang lugar at malalayong lugar sa Pilipinas. Different industries, different backgrounds. Thank you, Microsoft Philippines, for making this possible.
Nagpapasalamat kami sa inyong lahat for joining us today. And Ruth, we are extremely excited to welcome 7 out of the 9 vice presidential candidates right here at the Quadricentennial Pavilion at the University of Santo Tomas.
UST has been our trusted partner in our debates. In 2016, we had the VP debate. And 2019, di ba? We had our senatorial debate dito rin sa venue na ito. Maraming salamat, UST. We are very much grateful.
And now, Ruth, it is time to welcome our candidates for Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines in alphabetical order. Walden Bello. He's a former Akbayan Party List representative, running mate of Labor leader Leody de Guzman.
Our next candidate, pro-life advocate Rizalito David. of Dr. Jose Montemayor Jr.
Also with us, economist Manny S.D. Lopez. He is the lone VP candidate without a running mate. 3 candidates, Ruth, are now on stage. We've got 4 more to go. Time to welcome on stage a cardiologist and social media personality, Dr. Willie Ong. He's running alongside Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso. Our next candidate, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan. Running mate of Vice President Leni Robredo.
Also with us, lawyer Carlos Serapio. He's running alongside businessman Faisal Mangondato.
And our final candidate, Senate President Tito Soto. Running mate of Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson.
Rico, nakaka-excite na makita ang 7 out of 9 vice presidential bets here on stage. 2 are unable to make it. Deputy House Speaker Lito Atienza, originally confirmed, but he recently begged off upon doctor's advice kasi po he had to undergo knee replacement surgery after he suffered an accident. Yung isa pang VP candidate, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte, declined our invitation. We're keeping their podiums on stage nonetheless.
And Ruth, as with any debate, we have rules. We'll be asking general and specific questions. Your allotted time is 90 seconds or 1 minute and a half to answer these questions. And to be clear, general questions will be answered by all the candidates.
If your name, running mate, or your party is mentioned or alluded to, you can do a rebuttal. Pero para dyan, 1 minute lang po.
And there are monitors in front of you that will serve as your timing device. You'll hear this sound. To remind you, you have 10 seconds left. When your time is up, you will hear this other sound. Kandidato. So let's go ahead and begin with your opening statement. It will be your answer to this general question. Vice presidents can be appointed by the president to a cabinet position. If elected, what cabinet position do you prefer and why? Candidates will answer this question in alphabetical order. So we will begin with Walden Bello. Please go ahead, sir.
Well, I would prefer the Department of Finance because it is such a central cabinet position. Talyode and I will have a tax on the top 750 people, billionaires in the country. And this will be for social programs that will go and benefit the vast majority of our people. We are going to legislate job security and higher wages, starting with $750 paid per day. And this is not just out of this is also because we want to put purchasing power in the hands of our people to really make a very creative economy. Abroad in search of jobs. We are going to legalize divorce and same
ibalik ang moralidad ng bayan upang tayo'y umunlad. Yun po ang aking nais na gawin kung ako'y magiging ikalawang Pangulo. Marami pong salamat.
Manny Lopez, it's your turn.
Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Manny S.D. Lopez. Trade and Industry. Sapagkat ang priority po natin ngayon, after this unprecedented pandemic, this crisis that we are facing, we will be facing severe challenges in the coming years. And economic recovery is a must to help uplift the lives of our people. And I have a comprehensive three-pronged agenda to help advance our economic recovery. And this is number one, a new omnibus investment code to make doing business in the country a lot easier. We could attract more investors, we could as Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. Sapagkat ang priority po natin ngayon, after this unprecedented pandemic, this crisis that we are facing, we will be facing severe challenges in the coming years. And economic recovery is a must to help uplift the lives of our people. And I have a comprehensive three-pronged agenda to help advance our economic recovery. And this is number one, a new omnibus investment code to make doing business in the country a lot easier. We could attract more investors, we could improve the productivity of our businesses, of our enterprises. At pangalawa po, alam naman natin na maraming nahirapan, especially micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. And the solution to this is a legal framework to enable them to recover. Yan po at provision of low-interest loans. Marami pong salamat.
In 6 months,
We'd
July,
like to hear
August,
next from Dr. Willie Ong.
susunod. Kaya depende sa presidente.
Kamusta po sa ating mga televiewers ng CNN? Pasalamat muna tayo sa CNN paggawa nitong debate. Napakaganda po nitong lugar. Parang division of labor po
Kaya
kami
po tayo
ni Mayor
tumakbo,
Isko.
simple
Sabi
lang
niya,
eh.
ikaw bahala,
Pandemic
Doc
po
Willie, sa
talaga.
kalusugan.
Dahil sa
Siya
pandemic,
bahala sa
talagang nasira
pabahay,
yung ekonomiya,
edukasyon,
trabaho,
foreign
pati
affairs.
tourism natin.
Kailangan natin
Ang
magawa
partner
ng
ko,
mga
si Mayor
hospital.
Isko Moreno,
We need
sabi niya,
an
Doc
infectious
Willie,
disease hospital.
kung
Doon
hindi
natin lalagay
pandemic
yung
time,
COVID
baka
patients, eh.
hindi ikaw ang
Hindi po
tamang
ako
Vice
politiko,
President.
doktor
Pero ngayon,
po
dahil
ako, pero
pandemic,
nakikita ko paano
kailangan
bilhin
natin
yung
maayos.
pinakamagandang
Itong
gamot sa
pandemic,
inyo
paulit-ulit.
para mabuhay
Every 6
kayo
months,
at
may
inyong
bago.
mga anak.
Alpha,
Salamat po.
Beta,
Next, may
Delta,
we hear from
Omicron.
Senator
In 6
Francis
months,
Pangilinan.
July, August, hindi natin alam kung ano yung susunod. Kaya depende sa Presidente kung gusto niya ako lagay sa Department of Health, gusto niya ako gawing overview sa health, okay po dito. Kung gusto niya ako tumulong sa ayuda, okay din po sa akin. Parang division of labor po kami ni Mayor Isko. Sabi niya, ikaw bahala, Doc Willie, sa kalusugan, siya bahala sa pabahay, trabaho, edukasyon, foreign affairs. Kailangan natin magawa ng mga ospital. We need an infectious disease hospital. Doon natin lalagay yung COVID patients. Hindi po ako politiko, doktor po ako, pero nakikita ko paano bilhin yung pinakamagandang gamot sa inyo para mabuhay kayo at inyong mga anak. Salamat po.
Next, may we hear from Senator Francis Pangilinan.
Magandang araw po sa kanilang lahat. Depende po sa ating magiging Pangulo na si President Leni Robredo kung ano ang iaatang niya sa atin. Pero kung ano man ang merong kinalaman sa agrikultura at
We need an
pangingisda.
infectious disease hospital. Doon natin lalagay yung COVID patients. Hindi po ako politiko, doktor po ako, pero nakikita ko paano bilhin yung pinakamagandang gamot sa inyo para mabuhay kayo at inyong mga anak. Salamat po.
Next, may we hear from Senator Francis Pangilinan.
Na presyo ng pagkain at agrikultura. Tututukan natin ang alalay at ayuda at tulong sa magsasaka at mangingisda. Bilang dating Food Security Secretary, pinigilan natin tumaas ang presyo ng bigas. Dahil nilabanan natin ang mga price cartel at
ay
ang
batay
smuggling.
din sa pipiliin ng
Itinigil
aking
natin
Pangulo,
ang bongpat
si Presidente
sa
Rizal Romualdado.
importation ng bigas
Kung ano po ang ibibigay
na
niya
nauwi
tungkulin
sa
sa akin,
savings ng
yun po ang
7.3
aking
billion
gagampanan.
pesos sa loob lamang
Datapwat
ng
po ako'y kanyang tatanungin
Yan
kung
ang
ano
sinisentro
ang aking
ang
personal
maayos
na
at
preference
mataas na presyo ng pagkain
dahil po
at
sa aking
agrikultura.
academic background,
Tututukan
sa
natin
aking experience
ang alalay at
in
ayuda at
engaging
tulong
different
sa magsasaka at
leaders
mangingisda.
and functionaries
Bilang dating Food
of
Security
different
Secretary,
nations, I prefer to
pinigilan
take the
natin tumaas
portfolio
ang presyo ng
of
bigas.
the Department of Foreign
Dahil
Affairs. And in that position,
Yan ang
I
ating
think the
tututukan.
experiences that I have had
Now,
in
we would
doing
like
back
to hear
channeling
from
work
Carlos Serapio.
will provide
CNN
the kind
at
of
mabiyayang panahon,
background as well as expertise
Ang aking
for me to be able to
ay
do
batay din sa
justice
pipiliin
to the
ng aking
position.
Pangulo.
Kaya
Si
po,
Presidente Paisano
dyan
Mandato.
halaga sapagkat
Kung ano po ang
tayo
bibigyan niyang
naharap
tungkulin
sa
sa akin,
ating ngayong
yun po ang aking
mga
gagampanan.
relasyon
Datapwat
sa iba't
po
ibang
ako'y kanyang
bansa,
tatanungin
lalo't higit na
kung ano
dito
ang
sa ating
aking
rehiyon.
personal na
At ito
preference
po ay napakahalaga.
dahil po sa aking
Kahit na pa
academic
nga
background,
ang aming
sa
programa
aking experience
ay ang
in
tanging
engaging
programa ng
different,
transisyon. At sa
leaders and
transition po,
functionaries
mahalaga na
of different
maunawaan ng
nations,
ibang bansa
I prefer
kung ano
to take
po
the portfolio
ang ating patutunguhan
of the
na
Department of
sistema.
Foreign Affairs.
Salamat po.
Senate
And
President
in that
Tito
position,
Soto.
I think the
Soto.
experiences that I
Salamat po
have
ng
had
marami.
in
Salamat po
doing
ng
back
marami. The Dangerous Drugs Board and the Department of Interior and Local Government. I will be able to implement the Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002 completely. Republic Act 9165, of which I was the principal author of, and created the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency. The present situation calls for the attention of government to the problem of drug abuse, not just illegal drugs. Those are two different animals. Kapag ang inasikaso mo lang ay yung supply reduction strategy na enforcement lamang at may kakulangan sa prosecution, you will never solve the problem of illegal drugs. But if you concentrate on prevention and rehabilitation, which is partly the demand reduction strategy that is necessary
natin yan.
And after the break, we'll have specific questions for two of our senators. We'd like to hear next from Kiko Pangilinan and Tito Soto about
Ngayong narinig na po natin ang opening statements ng ating mga kandidato. Susunod na bubusisiin natin mga mahahalagang issue. And among the top voting issues this 2022 is the COVID-19 pandemic. Paano kaya nila tutugunan yung mga naging epekto ng pandemya sa ating bansa? Aalamin natin yan.
And after the break, we'll have specific questions for two of our senators. We'd like to hear next from Kiko Pangilinan and Tito Soto about the recent Senate Blue Ribbon Committee report on the pharmaceutical controversy. You're watching a
Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. DX General Santos. DX General Santos. Una sa balita. Una.
Dito ka sa mas malakas kaysa paracetamol. Laban sa iba't ibang pain.
What are debates for? Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question.
And on February 27th, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land. They have confirmed they're attending, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability. Side by side, on one stage, on one network.
Break back in 2015, and he has warned yet again about the emergence of more pandemics in the future. Here is our next question. As Vice President, what concrete steps will you take our country for the next pandemic? Candidates, the more specific your answer, the better. Manny Lopez, we will start off with you.
Thank you very much for this very relevant question. I happen to be a Bill Gates reader and also a veteran faced in the past. and we will be facing as well in the future. And my general prescription is for a science-based, cost-effective, and pragmatic approach to pandemic management. Because this is a crisis. In our case, of biblical proportions. And accordingly, the general prescription is our bayanihan spirit, our caring for each other. And if I can go into specifics, we those in the level of decision making with regards to our pandemic response, mitigation, and recovery strategy, we should make it a point that we have to have policies that specifically address the issues beyond political and commercial interest. Because this is what really bothers our pandemic response. And we could do better. And we could do better by caring more.
Prophylaxis, I think we should go there. The vaccination program is good, but what do we do after 6 months? After 6 months, we'll ask Congress again for 78 billion para mabili na naman for 100 million Filipinos. But what do we do after 6 months? So I think after we should 6 months, we'll ask Congress again for 78 billion prophylaxis para mabili na naman for 100 million Filipinos. Every 6 months, I should say. So I think we should in the other parts of the world. Kaya concentrating more on the prophylaxis. Bigyan natin ng diin yung ganito. Siguro dapat bilisan lalo ng FDA. Or discoveries, I should say. In the other parts of the world. Kaya kailangan sa prevention sa atin. But of course, must bigyan natin ng diin yung ganito. Siguro dapat bilisan lalo ng FDA ang pag-approve ng mga prophylaxis at makakatulong sa prevention sa atin. But of course, the health standards, the health protocols should remain.
Rizalito David, your pandemic response.
Firstly, kailangan magkaroon ng summit para magkaroon ng consensus ang aming mga doktor at scientifico na nagsasabing may gamot sa COVID, meron tayong pwedeng gawin. Mga pamamaraan, hindi natin pinakinggan yung mga ibang scientifico at ibang mga doktor. Kaya yan ang nangyari sa atin. Dapat hindi na po maulit yan. Dapat hindi na po maulit yan. Kailangan talaga ng isang national consensus on what to do. National consensus on what to do. And with other pandemic that will hit us in the future. Maraming salamat po. In the future. Maraming salamat po.
Kung inyo pong mapapansin, no, meron questions kasi yung nakaraang question na yan, it's a specific question. Ibig sabihin, 1 or 2 or up to 3 candidates lang po ang sasagot. But we also have general questions kung ang saan silang lahat ang sasagot. So, bawat isa po sa inyo ay posibleng matanong ng specific question.
And for our specific question, respond to, we'll need the help of our virtual audience who are behind us right now via a show of hands. Parang botohan ito. And it's to gauge how satisfied our audience is with a candidate's answer. So, to our virtual audience who are joining us today.
Hello.
Sample lang muna. Hello, everybody. Kamusta po kayo?
Show of hands.
Show of hands, please. Can we ask you to raise your hands?
Westy.
Ayan, maraming salamat, no, for your participation today in this vice presidential debate.
Ngayon naman, we want to ask a specific question to 2 of our senators regarding the recent... bago natin puntahan yun, no?
Oo.
Kasi binanggit mo pala kanina yung tungkol sa Pharmally.
Correct.
Report.
Meron tayong tanong for Dr. Willie
So
Ong.
bago natin puntahan yun, we go first to Dr. Willie Ong. And this is a specific question for you.
Lahat naman po ng field na kailangan natin aralin, inaaral ko naman po. Ako po isang doktor, cardiologist, 18 years po ako nag-aral. Lahat naman po ng nagkataon lang talaga nila kailangan natin aralin, inaaral ko naman po. Ako po isang doktor, cardiologist, 18 years po ako nag-aral. Hirap na hirap na yung mga kababayan natin sa lockdown, di alam anong gagawin. Simple lang po kailangan natin magtayo ng infectious disease hospital. Doon natin lalagay yung mga COVID patients. Simple lang po kasi namamatay yung mga ibang pasyente natin. Kailangan natin magtayo ng cancer center of the Philippines. Salamat kay Sen. Hindi pwede sa PGH kasi namamatay yung mga ibang pasyente natin. Kailangan natin magtayo ng cancer center of the Philippines. Kailangan ng magandang gamot para sa COVID. May gamot na po sa ngayon sa COVID. Nila yung bayanihan, ang pangalan, bakit hindi nagtayo ng ospital? Kailangan ng magandang gamot para sa COVID. May gamot na po sa ngayon sa COVID. Paxlovid ang pangalan, darating sa Maynila na order ni Mayor Isko Moreno, February 27. Napakaganda nito. Sa Amerika, binibigay ito. Hindi ko alam ba't hindi natin bilibili. So yung Remdesivir, Paxlovid, and others na gagawin natin. With other fields, kahit ano paggawa sa akin, okay naman sa akin. Kung sa agriculture, sa DSWD, o sa foreign affairs, okay lang po. Mabilis tayo matuto at gagawin po natin.
Senator S.V. Soto, would you like to respond? May binanggit po si Dr. Willie Ong.
Concerning what
Bakit
topic?
wala pong hospital yung binanggit niyo, sir? Dr. Ong?
Sen, sabi ko lang sana nagtayo tayo ng infectious disease hospital para hindi na ilagay yung COVID patients sa PGH kasi nagre-reklamo yung mga doctors na di-displace yung mga cancer patients.
Problem of those who will be victims of the lockdown. Victims, I say, na nawalan ng trabaho. Talaga ginawa namin yung Bayanihan 1. Naman yung problema ng mga transport sector. But then again, as usual, the implementation is much to be desired.
Ayan, napakinggan natin po, no? Yung
Rico.
Ayan. And of course, Ruth, no, we would also like to reiterate to our candidates if there has been a
which is impeachable under the Constitution. Senator Kiko, you signed the report. Our question, if these individuals are
Siyempre, pagka sila ay sinampahan na ng kaso, kailangan respetuhin natin ang proseso ng ating criminal justice system. At makakaasa ang ating mga kababayan, hindi tayo makikialam. Dapat nga ang mga nagkasala ay managot at dapat mabilis ang paglilitis. Yan ang hirap sa ating sistema ng katarungan, mabagal. Kaya dapat din mamodernisa ang ating justice system, dagdagan ng pondo para mabilis ang paglilitis, mabilis mapaparusahan ang mga dapat nagkasala at mabilis din ang hustisya. Kaya bilang Vice President, dito sa kaso ng Pharmally, kinakailangan talagang busisiin ng husto at pursigihin. Ngayon pa lang nagtatago ang napakaraming mga testigo na dapat sana'y magpapaliwanag at pinoprotektahan pa at dinedepensahan. Ibig sabihin, kung wala silang kasalanan, bakit sila nagtatago? So we can assure the public, pag tayo ang binigyan ng pagkakataon, we will ensure that justice will be served. Hindi biro itong nangyari dito sa bilyong-bilyong halaga na binulsa habang namamatay ang ating mga kababayan. Itong mga dapat nagkasala, itong mga nagkasala talagang maparusahan.
Tingnan natin ngayon ang reaction ng ating virtual audience. Another show of hands. Are you satisfied with the response of Senator Kiko Pangilinan? Tingnan natin kung
Meron
may mga
tayong konting
magtataas ng
delay,
kamay.
Ruth. So hintayin natin ang show of hands ng ating virtual audience. Yes?
Ayan,
If they're
nakita natin
satisfied
nagtaas sila ng
indeed
kamay.
with the response of Senator Kiko Pangilinan. More than 50% are satisfied with his response. Maraming salamat po. And now, Senate President Tito Soto, you have denied that you are pressuring senators to sign the Blue Ribbon Committee report on Pharmally. Ang sabi po ninyo, Senate President, ang sabi po ninyo, Senate President, I will resign, quote, and shoot myself. What is your stand on the Senate Blue Ribbon? What is your stand on the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee report?
To prove that I was not pressuring anyone. Because the news report was that, or was it fake news on social media? Dissent. Hindi ganun kadali po yun na magpapirma o pumirma. It's up to them. Then also, just to make it clear, baka akala nila yung draft report, yun na ang Senate Committee report. Hindi pa. Linawin ko muna. Kung may mga dapat sampahan ng kaso, sampahan. That is my personal opinion. But the draft committee report will have to go through plenary. And in plenary, that is when we pass it, we debate on it, para malaman natin kung sino-sino mga kasama dapat do sa kaso at sino dapat ang makakasuhan. Because usually, the ombudsman nakikinig sa pinapadala na Senado. Katulad ng ginawa kong investigasyon sa PhilHealth na pinakasuhan ko lahat yung mga gumawa ng kabalbalan dun sa pera ng PhilHealth. Nakasuhan lahat yun, but we passed it in plenary. Majority signed, but we passed it in plenary, and it was a Senate report. It was no longer a
I'd like to see a show of hands if you
Blue
are
Ribbon
satisfied
draft
with
report,
Senate President
like what
Tito
is happening
Soto's
now.
response. Virtual audience, we would like to see a show of hands
Itaas po
if
natin
you
ang
are
kamay if you're
satisfied.
satisfied with the response of SP Soto. Ayan na, may
We are seeing some who are
taas.
responding to Senator Tito Soto's response. All right. Maraming salamat po for your participation. Actually, if Representative Lito Atienza was here, we would have also asked him also about the House panel's
This is a
own
CNN
probe
Philippines
on the
special
Pharmally
presentation.
controversy.
The Filipino Votes
This is a
Vice
CNN
Presidential
Philippines
Debate
special
2022.
The Filipino Votes
Candidates,
Vice
the
Presidential
mission,
Debate
vision of the office of the
2022.
President states
Candidates,
you will
the
serve
mission,
to
vision
uplift the
of the
lives
office of
and
the President
protect
states
the liberty
you will serve
of the
to
Filipino the people.
And our next question pertains to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, which is considered the backbone of the Philippine economy. But they're unevenly affected by this pandemic. We'd like to know how you'll uplift their lives amid this raging health crisis. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Radio Philippines Network. EX General Santos. EX General Santos. Una sa balita. Musika o kalingawan. Mas tulong pinalakas. Radyo. Rondang.
What are debates for? Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question.
Walden Bello, Rizalito David, Manny Lopez, Zoc Willie O, Kiko Pangilinan, Carlos Serabio, Tito Soto.
And on February 27th, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land.
Ernesto Abella, Leody Di Guzman, Disco Moreno Dumagoso, Norberto Gonzalez, Ping Lacson, Faisal Magundato, Jose Montemayor Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Lenny Robredo.
They have confirmed they're a candidate, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability. Side by side, on one stage, on one network.
Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. EX General Santos. EX General Santos. Una sa balita. Musika o kalingawan. Mas tulong pinalakas. Radyo. Rondang.
Maingat, magpagaling.
This is CNN Philippines.
Ang galing ng alagang Bayo Jessie. Ingat!
Alagang Unilab yan.
Mukhang magkakasubukan na naman tayo
Binabayo na po ng bagyong Ulysses ang malaking bahagi ng Luzon.
Marami pang lugar ang posibleng maapektuhan ng El Nino.
Naitala sa Dagupan City noong Sabado ang pinakamataas na heat index.
Mo kaming subukan. Matinding init man yan o malakas na bagyo. Hindi mo kayang vulkasil ko. Vulkasil. Para sa akin, ito ang tibong subok ng panahon.
Palaban, El General, ito'y matibay. El General, ito'y makapit. El Supremo, ito'y matapat. Palaban, boxing, palaban. Supremo. Samahan ng mga palaban, El General, ito'y matibay.
You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation, The Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022.
7 out of 9 candidates are here on stage. stage with us, and we're asking them your questions to know where they stand on key issues that are important to all of us. At isa nga po dyan, yung binanggit natin kanina, micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs, which comprise 99.5% of all business establishments in the country. Ang tawag nga po natin sa kanila, backbone ng ating ekonomiya. Without them, millions of our kababayans will be jobless. Candidates, we want to know, what can you do in your capacity as Vice President to come to the rescue of small business owners who are struggling from the pandemic and from other disasters? Banggitin na rin natin yung Typhoon Odette. We want to hear first from Carlos Serapio. President, to come to the rescue of small business owners
law passed
who are
by Congress,
struggling from the
and they have
pandemic
practically
and from other
factored every
disasters.
scenario
Banggitin na
that
rin
can
natin
happen.
yung
And they have actually budgeted a big amount of money in support of SME. Now, considering that the incoming administration will have to abide not just by the law, but will have to use the funds that have been budgeted under the General Appropriations Act. Ang magagawa lamang po namin ay sumunod po kami doon sa tinatadhana ng batas at ipatupad namin po ito na mahusay. Since I'm running under a dual context, we're running under a transition platform, and that at the same time, we are going to be operating in the existing system. Ang aming approach po sa old system is ipatupad yung maganda na nilang simulan at gamitin yung pondo na kanilang nailagay po doon. Datapwat, meron din po kaming napansin doon sa Bayanihan Act. Ang research and development ay binigyan lamang ng 10 milyon, samantalang ang mga daanan ng bisikleta na mahalaga rin ay binigyan ng 1 bilyon mahigit. So tingin namin ay dito naman sa aming panukala sa transition, research and development ay dapat bigyan ng mas marami pong halaga.
Kayo naman po, Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Ang Robredo Pangilinan Tandem, ang kanyang mungkahi ay kumuha ng 100 bilyong piso mula sa mga realignment lamang ng ating current budget at suportahan yung small and medium enterprises bilang ayuda. Pero merong mga, hindi to utang, ayuda ito, pero merong mga restrictions or merong mga kinakailangan gawin. Ika nga, 90% of our employees or employment comes from small, medium enterprises. So we really have, kinakailangan suportahan. So yan ang ating gagawin. At syempre, kinakailangan talagang busisiin ng gusto. The DTI is a very professional organization, very professional, mabilis silang kumilos. Pagka binigay mo sa DTI yung 100 billion para sa suporta sa small and medium enterprises, talagang alam nating mapupunta yan sa tamang tulong at tamang ayuda para tuloy-tuloy ang ating ekonomiya ay sumigla.
Walden Bello, if you are elected as Vice President, paano po ninyo tutulungan ang mga micro, small, and medium enterprises?
Well, mahalaga ho itong topic na ito kasi unang-una ho, we need to
very professional, mabilis silang kumilos. Pagka binigay mo sa DTI yung 100 billion para sa suporta sa small and medium enterprises, talagang alam nating mapupunta yan sa tamang tulong at tamang ayuda para tuloy-tuloy ang ating ekonomiya ay sumigla.
100,000.
Walden Bello, if you are elected as Vice President, paano po ninyo tutulungan ang mga micro, small, and medium enterprises?
Well, mahalaga ho itong topic na ito kasi unang-una ho, we need to repeal yung Foreign Investment Act Amendment na nag-lower ho nung Filipino only.
that have been passed recently.
To about 100,000 lang, no? From 200,000 to 100,000. Yun ho, retail trade liberalization.
Sinasabi nyo,
Nakapasa
for
ng
Filipino, kayo,
it lowers
you're
from
liberalizing all these
125,
laws.
no?
And kami ni Calyodi, we are going to have 250 billion emergency fund for MSEs. Pero hindi sapat yan. We need to bring back.
And Senator
Pangilinan
also signed that
really. So, paano yan? Sinasabi nyo, for Filipino kayo,
mga foreigners.
and then yung sabi nga ni Senator Soto, he tries to portray himself as independent of the Duterte administration. That's not true.
Thank you very much, Walden Bello. Would you like to rebut to what Walden Bello has just said, Senate President?
The retail trade liberalization law is to uplift the economy of the country. It is madaling mamintas sabihin nga no, ba't binaba yung ano.
Mr. Bello, no interruption, please. Please proceed, Senate President.
We have lowered the threshold for those who would want to invest, foreign investments, because that is the way to open up the economy. Hindi pa pwedeng yung sitwasyon lang natin ngayon na mangyayari. Because we have, in our case, we have a stopgap measure, economy of the country. We have the budget reform advocacy. Madaling mamintas. Right now, there are, every year, for the last 10 years, the 328 billion of the budget is unused. And we can easily use that.
We will let you finish your statement, Senate President.
We can easily use that to help the MSMEs easily. For example, give 1 billion each for every province. There are only 81 provinces. 1 billion each. Imagine what it can do for the economy in Occidental Mindoro and all the other provinces, especially the poor provinces.
Thank you, Senate President. Senator Kiko.
We supported the measure precisely because we feel given yung situation sa ASEAN, tayo mapakababa nung investments natin mula sa abroad, napakahalaga nan. Ngunit binalanse naman natin. Kaya nga merong 100 billion na suporta sa ating maliliit na negosyante para talagang mabigyan sila ng alalay at ayuda habang nasa gitna tayo ng COVID response. We have ng COVID at ang pandemya. So kinakailangan natin balansehin. Hindi pa pwedeng bawal ang lahat ng foreign investment o kaya restricted to the degree na hindi na lalaki ang ating ekonomiya dahil nakakadagdag naman sa totoo lang ng trabaho. But at the same time, suportahan ang ating lokal. Kaya nga merong 100 billion which is 85 billion more than what this administration has given in terms of assistance to micro, small, and medium
ng COVID
at ang pandemya.
Again, paalala lang
So
po natin sa
kinakailangan
ating
natin
mga
balansehin.
kandidato,
Hindi pa
huwag po
pwedeng
nating interrupt
bawal
pag
ang
merong
lahat ng
sumasagot.
foreign
And for the
investment
rebuttal,
o kaya
you just have 1
restricted
minute.
Alright,
to the
pakinggan
degree
natin,
na
no, si,
hindi na lalaki ang
Senate
ating
President
ekonomiya
at
dahil
si
nakakadagdag
Senator
naman
Kiko.
sa totoo lang ng
Are you
trabaho.
satisfied,
But at the same time,
Mr. Bello, with their
suportahan ang ating
responses?
lokal.
No, I am not,
Kaya nga
because
merong
they're opening
100
up
billion which is
and small
85
enterprises,
billion more
you
than
know,
what
to
this
be eaten
administration
up
has
by
given in
putting
terms of
down the
assistance to
threshold
micro,
by
small, and medium
foreign,
enterprises.
Again,
entrepreneurs and
paalala lang po
businesses.
namin sa
And then
ating
they
mga
say that they're
kandidato,
protecting
huwag po nating
SMEs
interrupt pag merong sumasagot. And for the
medium
rebuttal,
enterprises.
you just have 1 minute.
Alright, napakinggan natin no, si Senate President at si Senator Kiko.
Pero hindi yun ang problema. The problem is, for instance, yung tariff laws natin, 1 to 4% and all of that, really has gone down. So let's not kid ourselves. You're sending this country and our SMEs to the hands of all these foreign enterprises that will eat them up.
Walden Bello, we move on now to our next issue, which is also related to MSMEs. Many of those are Filipino fisherfolk whose livelihood have been affected not just by the pandemic but also by many other factors. This question goes to Senator Kiko Pangilinan. You promised to redeploy the Coast Guard and Navy ships to protect our fishermen from possible harassment from foreign vessels, which are mainly Chinese vessels. We're talking about a country with the largest navy in the world. At pagdating sa gray ships, they're also known as warships at ibang usapan na yan. So in April last year, President Duterte said he would send gray ships if China starts digging for oil, quote, to state vessels, which are mainly Chinese vessels. Dispute to We're talking about a country with the largest navy in the world.
I'm prepared
At
to
pagdating sa
fight
gray ships,
our-
they're also known
for
as
our rights
warships.
over the
At ibang
waters
usapan na yan.
of our
So in
exclusive
April
economic
last
zone,
year, President
and not be
Duterte said he would send
subservient. Hindi tayo
gray
pwedeng
ships
sunod-sunuran
if
sa
China starts
Gusto
digging
natin
for oil,
makipagkaibigan
quote,
sa China,
to
pero wag
state
naman
a claim.
dahil sa
Are you
pagkakaibigan
prepared to
natin
take
sa
this
kanila,
maritime dispute
i-give up
to
na
another
natin
level?
Yung 550,000 square kilometers of sovereign and exclusive economic zone. Alam mo, tinataboy ng ang ating mga mangingisda, ipaglaban natin ang ating soberenya. Dati, sunuran sa China. Gusto natin makipagkaibigan sa China, pero wag naman dahil sa pagka. Ngayon, dahil wala na yung Coast Guard, wala na yung Navy, talagang hindi na sila, wala nang pumuprotektahan sa kanila. So dapat i-resume yung patrol, dapat i-resume yung Coast Guard para pag naroon yung ating mga mangingisda, meron silang takbuhan. Number one. Number two, para tumaas ang kanilang kita. Ngayon, ang ating mga mangingisda, ipaglaban natin ang ating soberenya. Panggasolina lang. Ang kinikita nila, 40 to 60,000 a month dahil nakakapunti sila doon sa malayo. Ngayon, dahil wala na yung Coast Guard, wala na yung Navy, talagang hindi na sila, wala na pumuprotektahan sa kanila. So dapat i-resume yung patrol, dapat i-resume yung Coast Guard para pag naroon yung ating mga mangingisda, meron silang takbuhan. Number one. Number two,
Usapang
para
ekonomiya
tumaas
pa rin
ang
po
kanilang
tayo,
kita. Ngayon,
economic
3,000 pesos a month na lang ang kinikita. Kulang-kulang pa.
si Senate President?
Panggasolina lang.
Yes,
So
I think
kawawa
it's
ang ating
very
mangingisda.
important that the audience or our people know that we filed, and I personally filed in the Senate the creation of the establishing maritime zones. The maritime
Marine
zones
resources.
will
Ipaglaban
define
natin
the
yung arbitral
internal
ruling.
waters,
Dahil atin yan, atin ang West Philippines.
the territorial waters, and the economic zones of the country. Wala tayo noon. Kung ang China mayroong 9-dash line,
Kaya pa rin po
wala
tayo,
tayong
economic
maritime zones, hindi
recovery.
maliwanag. That is why I
Ruth,
filed the bill.
meron gustong sabihin si Senate President?
Yes, I think it's very... At pag dyan, pinasok tayo nung kapitbahay natin, papasok yung MDT, yung Mutual Defense Treaty. Ang kalaban nila, si Canona.
Thank you very much for that statement.
Mr. David.
Yes, Mr. David, you would like to rebut and add?
Nais ko lamang magtanong kay Ginoong Kiko Pangilinan. Kasi paulit-ulit naman yung sinasabi niya na labanan natin. No? Panahon pa ni Aquino at nitong kay Duterte, wala naman tayong nagawa doon sa sinasabi natin, ipaglaban natin . So sa papaano mong paraan gagawin?
Ang kalaban nila, si Canona.
Yung pakikipaglaban sa China para irespeto yung ating
Thank you very
karapatan
much,
doon sa ating
for
mga
that statement.
katubigan dyan sa West Philippine Sea.
Yes, Mr.
We cannot
David.
just simply say, ipaglaban natin. At ang nangyayari pa, sa mga proposals
You'd like to rebut
ang
and
nangyayari pa, pinapatronize nyo yung ating mahihirap. Hindi nyo naman sila ini-empower. With
Kasi
all those things that
paulit-ulit
you're
naman yung
presenting.
sinasabi niya
Libreng ganito, ayudang ganyan. That is not empowerment. That is patronage.
Siguro, can I respond?
Senator Kiko, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes. Siguro hindi narinig ni Ginoong David yung kanina kong sinabi dahil sabi ko nga, we will resume the Coast Guard patrols in the area. We will resume the Navy patrols in the area. So, yun ang gagawin para maprotektahan ang ating mga mangingisda at ma-assert natin ang ating soberenya ron. Number two, we will have to engage with ASEAN. Indonesia, Vietnam, they are also concerned about the aggression of China. We should align with ASEAN neighbors who together we can strengthen our position that this aggression is not right. And number two, the US, Australia, Japan are also concerned about this 9-dash line illegal claim, fake claim. And we have to also align and strengthen our alliances with them so that we have a broad alliance that will assert or will oppose this unacceptable 9-dash claim of China.
But we also have to take note, Senator Kiko, that China's Navy is far larger than the Philippines. And it is very minuscule compared to the power of
The
China.
US,
far larger than Vietnam and
Australia,
Indonesia, but
Japan
they can
are also
assert, they have
concerned about
asserted
this
their-
9-line
their
illegal
sovereignty over
claim,
these waters.
fake
Indonesia
claim.
even
And we have to also
binomba nga, pinasabog yung Chinese vessel eh. Hindi naman ibig sabihin gera.
In response to the two
So
gentlemen.
we have to assert. I'm not saying we should atakihin natin sila. Pero pagka tayo na wino-water cannon, hindi naman tayo pwedeng nakangalang. We have to, our Navy and our Coast Guard must defend our sovereign waters. And it starts with being present in these areas by having these patrols.
Gusto ng ating mga kandidato na marinig din yung side nila sa issue na ito. We have Congressman Bello. Yes, sir.
Napakita na natin dito yung magiging foreign policy ng Lenny Kiko administration at saka nung Lacson Soto administration. Sinabi na ni Senate President na he is going to invite the United States, to oppose China. Papasok na lang daw dyan, no? MDT, Mutual Defense Treaty. Hindi humari yan. We have to have an independent foreign policy.
By having these patrols.
And dito naman
Gusto ng ating mga kandidato na marinig din yung side nila sa issue na ito.
Come on!
We have Congressman
this is dominated by
Bello.
Australia.
Yes, sir.
I did not say
Napakita na natin dito yung
but you
magiging
said that
foreign
you are going
policy
to align with the
ng Lenny Kiko administration.
Senator,
At saka nung Lacson Soto administration. Sinabi na ni Senate President
pro-US policy.
he
You're
is
just
going to
getting that
invite
out
the
again.
United States.
Say we would join the Quad.
to
You look at the tapes.
oppose
Please,
China.
let's stick to the
Papasok na lang
facts.
daw dyan, no?
Professor, let's stick to the facts.
Mutual
You're a
Defense
professor.
Treaty.
Let's
Hindi
stick to
humari
the
yan.
facts.
We
All right,
have to have
we'll
an
have to end it there
independent
for now.
foreign
And,
policy. And dito
Senate
naman
President,
si
you would like to
Senator
respond.
Pangilinan,
As I
we
was
will join the
alluded to.
Quad. Come
Yes.
on.
I never said
This is
invite. I
dominated
did
by
not use the word
Australia,
invite. I
That's
want
you.
to got it.
Mr. Bello, please, let us finish Senate President's statement.
You follow the agreement that we have. We have a treaty. We have an agreement. Once pinasok tayo ng foreign, kahit hindi China, kahit sinong foreign, may aggression sa atin. And if they do that in the maritime zones that I am saying na dapat
let us finish, Senate President.
you follow
Papasok ang
the
mutual defense
agreement
treaty.
that we have.
Automatic yun.
We have a
And the
treaty. We
Department
have
of
an
State of the
agreement.
United States
Once
has already
pinasok
said that.
tayo ng
There's no
foreign,
one being
kahit
invited
hindi
here.
China, yun ang batas, yun ang agreement, yun ang treaty. Question sa atin, and if they do that in the maritime zones that I am saying na dapat ay ating
Let's follow the rules.
ano gusto natin? Pasukin lang tayo na China, hindi tayo papalag? Bubukaka tayo? Ba hindi pwede?
Mr. Bello. All right. We've heard both sides. We've heard their arguments. We have many topics to cover for this vice presidential debate, and we would like to inform all our candidates, please, no interruption. It was stated in the rules when we began this program. So we shall move on.
Sinabi na po natin kanina, sorry, no, na kailangang patayin natin yung mic pag meron pong pumapasok habang nagsasalita ang isang kandidato. Please
All right.
respect the rules.
We've heard
Okay.
both sides. We've heard their arguments.
Yes, sir.
We have
Marami pa
many
pong
topics to
pagkakataon
cover
na
for this vice
makapagsalita
presidential
Because
debate,
there's so many
and we would
issues
like to
that
inform
we need
all
to
our
cover in
candidates,
this debate.
please, no
All right.
interruption.
Moving on.
It was stated,
Moving on.
Ruth.
The next topic is all about economic recovery. Ito po ay isang topic rin na malapit sa ating publiko. It's a priority of any government in any part of the world. But before we talk about how we can move forward as a nation, pag-usapan muna natin yung realidad ngayon. Alam po namin, ramdam ng lahat yung linggo-linggo na pagtaas na presyo ng ating gasolina. And as vice presidential candidates, you're also here to represent the publiko. It's a priority of any government. What would your administration do to help consumers cope with rising fuel prices? Alam naman natin na may domino effect yan kasi tataas yung transport costs and that will also affect yung prices of basic goods and commodities. Kaya apektado po ang budget ng bawat pamilya. So ang tanong natin una ay kay Mr. Rizalito David. Ano po ang gagawin ng inyong administrasyon para mapigilan po or matulungan ang mga consumers to deal with the rising oil prices?
Alam nyo, 2 beses na ako nanawagan sa palasyo. At I hope na narinig din ng ating mga senador at mga congressmen. na magpatawag si Ginoong Pangulo, no, Rodrigo Duterte, ng special session of Congress para bigyan siya ng power to suspend the implementation of the
kay
excise
Mr.
taxes
Rizalito, David.
and probably bawasan
Ano po ang
yung
gagawin ng inyong
value-added tax
administrasyon
at the pump,
para
no?
mapigilan
That
po or
would,
matulungan ng mga consumers
reduce the
to deal
price
with the
by at
rising
least
oil
mga
prices?
5 to 6 pesos already, no? Dalawang beses na ako nanawagan sa palasyo para makarecover. I hope na narinig din ng ating mga senador at mga congressmen na magpatawag si Ginoong Pangulo, no? Ang isang pinaka-importante Rodrigo Duterte, pinabayaan natin kasi na session of Congress isang napakalaking asset natin noong panahon ni Ramos, yung Petron, na napakalaki ang kinikita. Ang sa akin, reduce the price by at least mga 5 to 6 pesos i-reacquire natin yung Petron, which is substantial, para ito ang magbarometer ng pricing ng ating fuel requirements dito sa bansa at makapag-refine tayo ng sarili nating ang isang pinaka-importante dito, fuel, no? Pinabayaan natin kasi na ibenta yung isang napakalaking asset natin dahil wala tayong sarili nating yung oil company. Kaya yun ang nais kong mangyari. Na napakalaki ang kinikita.
Nakikita po natin
ang
ngayon,
sa akin,
no,
kung kami ang
sa Eastern
mamumuno,
Europe.
i-reacquire natin yung
invading
Petron.
Ukraine.
Para ito ang
nakikita po natin
magbarometer
na
ng
umakyat
pricing ng
ngayon ang
ating
presyo
fuel
ng
requirements
crudo.
dito sa
Mahigit
bansa.
ng, or
At
lampas ng
makapag-refine tayo ng sarili nating
per barrel.
fuel. No?
Ano po ang ating solusyon? Because pag umakyat po ang presyo ng gasolina, lahat po
dahil wala
naapektuhan.
tayong sarili nating
tama yung
oil
sinabi mo,
company.
Rico, no? Talaga problema
Kaya
natin
yun
sa
ang nais
Russia
kong
and
mangyari.
Ukraine, tataas ang presyo ng
Doc Willie
gasolina,
Ong,
kuryente.
nakikita po
Ang
natin
plano
ngayon,
namin
no,
ni Mayor
ang
Isko
sitwasyon
ay pag
sa
nanalo
Eastern
siya,
Europe.
ibababa natin yung
Russia
tax by
invading
50%
Ukraine.
sa petrolyo
At nakikita po natin na
yung tax
umaakyat
sa
ngayon ang
kuryente
presyo.
para at least mabawasan ng mga 5 to 6 pesos. Itutuloy natin yung mga ayuda sa ating kababayan kasi nahirapan sila. Tulad ng ginawa ni Mayor Isko sa Maynila. Ngayon, February, March, meron
Ano
siyang
po ang
ayuda
ating
ng
solusyon? Because pag umaakyat po
700,000
ang
food
presyo ng
boxes
gasolina,
para lang
lahat po
maibsan.
naaapektuhan.
Problema talaga sa kuryente. Isa
tama
pa
yung
yung
sinabi mo, Rico,
malampayan
no?
natural
Talaga
gas
problema natin.
Mauubos na by 2027. Diba? So magre-rely na lang tayo sa iba, sa coal
50%
at
sa petrolyo
at 50% yung tax sa kuryente para at least
Pero yung
mabawasan ng mga
pinag-aawayan
5 to 6
natin kanina
pesos.
dito sa West
Itutuloy
Philippine
natin
Sea
yung
sa
mga
ating
ayuda.
kababayan.
Ano ba pinag-aawayan? Yung West Philippine Sea po kasi may 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. May 11 billion barrels of oil na nakatago doon. Tapos 7% ng mga isda natin nandun. Kaya kung pwede siguro muna hindi maggera, kausapin natin maigi yung China, sabihin natin atin to. Kung merong 60-40 deal, tataas natin yung renewable energy. Pero yung pinag-aawayan natin, Amerika, magbibigay ng armas sa atin. So kung pwede makuha tong mga tanging mga yaman na to para bumaba na yung presyo sa gas at kuryente. Salamat po.
Now let's go to Senator Tito Soto.
Natural
We have a
gas.
silver bullet
May
to
11
this,
billion
problems,
barrels of oil na nakatago doon.
encompassing,
Tapos
fuel,
7% ng mga
poverty,
isda natin nandun. Kaya kung
BRAVE.
pwede siguro muna
Matagal na namin programang tinutulak ni Senator Lacson ito. At we have, ibinabagay na namin sa panahon. It stands for Budget Reform Advocacy for
Kuryente.
Village
Salamat.
Empowerment.
Now let's go to Senator
Ang
Tito
kailangan
Soto.
kasi, nakahanda tayo, whatever we have a silver bullet to this sa problem oil sa ibang bansa. Encompassing. Kung nakahanda tayo sa baba, dapat ang budget reform natin, dapat manggaling sa bottom-up budgeting. Hindi katulad na nangyayari ngayon na ceiling, bibigyan ng ceiling yung mga departamento, magsasabit ng kung ano-ano, hindi alam kung ibinabagay ano na namin sa panahon.
Merong
disconnect. It stands for Budget Reform Advocacy for Village Empowerment. Ang kailangan kasi, nakahanda tayo, whatever mangyari sa oil sa ibang bansa. Iba kung nakahanda tayo sa baba. Dapat ang budget reform natin, dapat manggaling sa bottom-up budgeting. Hindi katulad na nangyayari ngayon na ceiling, bibigyan ng ceiling sariling yung mga departamento, magsasubmit ng kung ano-ano, hindi alam kung ano nangyayari sa baba. Merong disconnect. Meron tayong subsidy para sa mga kung ang magagawin natin ay yung budget reform na bottom-up, inaalam mo sa barangay, ano mga pangangailangan nyo, akit sa Municipal Development Council, akit sa Regional District Development Council, akit sa national level.
Pansin ko po, namimigay tayo ng mga billion dito in this program, no? But the truth of the matter, the reality that we will be facing is one that will require belt tightening. Sapagkat ang pandemya po, the repercussions of this pandemic, nahirapan ang global economy, ang ating local economy, maraming out of jobs, maraming mga iba't ibang mga micro, small, and medium scale enterprises na nalulugi. So we came up with a
mga
three-pronged socio-economic development
in this
and
program,
political reform
But the
agenda.
truth of the matter,
And this will
the
require
reality
a new
that we will be
omnibus investment
facing
code,
is one that will require
streamlined
belt
bankruptcy law
tightening.
and provision
Sapagkat,
for low
ang
interest
pandemya
loans
po, the
para po
repercussions
makabangon
of this
ang
pandemic,
ating mga MSPs,
nahirapan
ang global economy, ang ating local economy, maraming out of jobs, maraming mga iba't ibang mga micro, small, and medium scale enterprises na nalulugi. So we came up with a three-pronged socio-economic development and political reform agenda. And this will require a new omnibus investment code, a streamlined bankruptcy law, and provision for low-interest loans para po makabangon ang ating mga MSMEs, ang ating agrikultura.
Kailangan na ng price controls. And you know, when there's an
May
emergency,
gusto po atang sabihin si
there
Congressman
has to
Bello.
be
You have 1
price
minute, sir.
controls.
Yes,
And
I
then
think it would be
back
very
to the
important
situation,
with respect to yung sinabi ni
Senate,
Mr. David, that we not only have Petron back, but we repeal the oil deregulation law para naman may control tayo sa mga presyo. No? Secondly, kailangan na ng price controls. And, you know, when there's an emergency, there has to be price controls. And then, back to the Senator Soto was part of that. It was situation.
the Duterte administration.
The
So, what the
Senate,
hell?
you know,
You're saying you're for MSMEs, and then you're bringing down the taxes of the big ones.
tax of the
Marami pa tayong pag-uusapan mamaya. Posible pa tayong pumunta sa topic
yes,
ng
Mr.
ekonomiya.
Lopez would like to add.
Corporations in the midst of the pandemic.
Economists,
No? From
and a
30
management
to 20
professional, I think
for
we will have to
local,
strike a
and
balance.
from 30
When
to 25 for foreign.
budgeting and the priorities of the national government were undertaken, this was a pre-pandemic scenario. So accordingly, ang mga projections po, mga economic
You're saying
projections,
you're for
ay nakasaad
MSMEs, and
sa
then
ganung
you're
scenario.
bringing down
Ngayon,
the taxes of the
under
big ones.
the pandemic, you know, with
Marami
all the
pa tayong
repercussions,
pag-uusapan
negative
mamaya.
repercussions, I would also agree
Hindi pa tayo
with the
pumunta sa
Professor
topic.
Bello.
Yes, Mr. Lopez would like to add.
Kailangan magkaroon ng
Okay.
corresponding
Briefly.
economist and a management professional. I think we will have to strike a balance. When the budgeting and the priorities of the national government were
Okay, mamaya
undertaken,
mas marami
this
pa
was
tayong-
a
Quickly,
pre-pandemic
just very
scenario.
quickly.
So
Sinagot ko na
accordingly,
yung
ang mga
point
projections
ni,
po, mga economic
Ginoong
projections
Bello,
ay
na we
nakasaad
have to strike
sa
a
ganung
balance,
senaryo.
and that's
Ngayon,
why we put,
under the
a 100
pandemic,
we are
you
putting
know,
a
with all the
100
repercussions,
billion assistance fund for small and medium enterprises, as we also allow for investments from abroad, for example, to come in. So it's a balance that we answered the question already earlier.
Mamaya marami pa tayong pagkakataon na marinig ang ating mga kandidato. You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. When we return, the war on drugs and the International Criminal Court. This is the Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate
We put
2022.
we are putting
Stay
a
with
100
us.
We'll be
billion
right back.
assistance fund for small and medium enterprises, as we also allow for investments from abroad, for example, to come in. So it's a balance that we answered the question already earlier.
Mamaya marami pa tayong pagkakataon na marinig ang ating mga kandidato. You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation. When we return, the war on drugs and the International Criminal Court. This is the Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022. Stay with us.
We'll be right back.
Mabait si Papa. Pa! Si Pinky po.
Mano po, Mr. Fardo? Please, call me sir. Aba, laki ng supermarket dito ah. Bili tayo ng drinks. Ako na po ang drinks. Sige na. Gutom na ako. Kuha na mga kami, Mike. So, paano? Babiyahe pa tayo.
Uy, may free delivery! Basta McDo free delivery, di kailangan pag-isipan. Diretso na sa new McDelivery.
Participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question.
And on February 27, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land. They have confirmed their attending, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability. Side by side, on one stage, on one network.
The year has just begun, with corruption still entrenched.
Social media on Twitter, hashtag CNNPH VP Debate is currently one of the top trending.
Kaya pwede po kayo mag-tweet or mag-comment sa ating Facebook para malaman din natin kung ano yung reactions nyo.
A recent survey found that Filipinos have identified 5 top issues that the current administration should immediately address.
We would also like
Number
to
one
mention
is
to our
fighting
viewers
graft and corruption.
that on social media, on
Candidates,
Twitter,
we want to look
hashtag
at your
CNNPH
track
VP
record.
Debate is
What
currently
have you done
one of
in
the
the
top
past to
trending.
prove that as the next Vice President, you will have the ability and capacity to fight graft and corruption? Unahin natin si Rizalito David.
Ang corruption po ay nagmumula sa takot. Nagmumula sa takot. It can be rooted in fear. And in fear, nade-develop yung greed. Maraming panahon ko na pong sinasabi na dapat magkaroon tayo sa ating lipunan ng revolusyon sa pananampalataya. Pretty much naman kasi alam natin ang mga sagot dyan sa ating mga problema. Pero bakit hindi nangyayari na masagutan natin? Dahil nagkukulang tayo sa pag-ibig, no? Hindi political will, pag-ibig. Kaya po, yung corruption ay yumayabong dahil wala tayong pag-ibig sa ating panahon ko na pong sinasabi na dapat magkaroon tayo sa ating lipunan ng revolusyon sa pananampalataya. Restore all Pretty much naman kasi alam natin ang mga pratikong panawagan, magkaroon tayo ng himagsikan sa ating mga problema. Pero bakit hindi nangyayari na masagutan natin? Dahil nagkukulang tayo sa pag-ibig. Wala na, hindi lahat ng batas ginawa na natin para maiwasan ng korupsyon, pero walang nangyayari. Bakit? Kasi nasa puso yun, yung takot at yung sinasabi ko, ibalik natin ang gobyerno kay Kristo. Mawala at mawawala lamang yan kung tayo'y magbabago. Yun ang pratikong panawagan, magbabago ang lipunan kung ang bawat isa ay magkakaroon ng pagpapanibago sa pamamagitan ng pag-aalay ng sarili sa mga turo ng ating Panginoon.
Senator Kiko Pangilinan, your track record on fighting graft and corruption.
Well, 3 beses na tayong hinalal ng ating mga kababayan bilang senador mula noong 2001 at mahalaga sa akin ang tiwala na ibinigay sa atin ng ating mga kababayan. Kaya tiniyak natin na sa 3 termino natin ni minsan, hindi tayo nasangkot sa anumang kaso ng anomalya, number 1. So maliwanag yan. Number 2, nung tayo ay NFA chairman ng NFA board, for the first time in 42 years, nag-reject ng bid ang NFA dahil masyadong mataas. In fact, 4 na beses tayo nag-reject ng bid. Hindi daw nangyari yan sa 42 taon ng NFA. Bakit nag-reject? Termino natin ni minsan, hindi tayo nasangkot sa anumang kaso ng anomalya, number 1. At sa 4 natin pag-reject. Number 2, nung tayo ay presyo ng Thailand at Vietnam ng kanilang chairman ng NFA board. At for the first time in 42 years, nag-reject ng dahil dito. So, ang NFA dahil masyadong mataas. In fact, 4 na beses tayo nag-reject ng bid. Hindi daw nangyari yan sa 42 taon ng NFA. Bakit ang pagmamodernisa ng ating justice system? Dinagdagan natin ang sahod ng mga huwes, binaba natin ang vacancy rate sa huwes nung tayo ng 7 billion pesos dahil dito ng ating mga prosecutor. Dahil pag malakas ang sistema ng katarungan, talaga ang corruption mababawasan talaga dahil yan ang ating track record at
now may we hear from Manny Lopez.
First term natin talagang binusisi natin at dinepensa ang pagmamodernisa ng
businessman and public official. I once served also in NFA GrainScore as its president and general manager, and I fought graft and corruption to the fullest extent of my capability and my ability. And I lost. Why? Because there is no political will to fight graft and corruption in this country. It has become endemic, and it seems to get worse as we businessman, more and distinguished public officials. Legislators. I once served also in NFA GrainScore as its president and general manager. How do we address graft and corruption more effectively? To the fullest we can look at it from of my capability and my ability. Because graft and corruption in this country has become systemic. It does require systemic solutions. And we have this e-governance system that could address specific loopholes in the public financial system. And we can adopt this. This is likewise a UN-approved and supported initiative. What do we propose? And how do we address graft and corruption? Distinguished colleagues here have mentioned. We can look at fighting graft and corruption systemic perspective. A renewal graft and corruption in this country has become systemic. And does require systemic to fight graft and corruption. And we
Let's move on sa isa pang mainit na issue. Noong November, the International Criminal Court put on hold its investigation into the country's controversial war on drugs. It was in response to the government's deferral request. Ang sabi ng gobyerno natin, gagawa na lang daw sila ng sarili nilang investigasyon dito. Candidates, your presidents have different views on cooperating or not with the ICC. But we want to know first and foremost from you, will you push to have the country rejoin the ICC? On sa isa pang mainit na issue. We start noong November, with SP Soto. The International Criminal Court put on hold its investigation into the
resolution and a petition I filed with the Supreme Court
controversial war on drugs. It was in response to the government's deferral request. Ang sabi ng gobyerno natin, gagawa na lang daw sila ng sarili nilang
2/3 vote ang binibigay ng konstitusyon at binibigay sa Senado at binibigay namin. Pero once mag-abrogate, ang sinasabi namin sa Senado, kailangan paalam din sa amin.
Will you
Kailangan
push to have
ipasa
the
din namin
country
na sinasabi namin
rejoin
payag kami
the
i-abrogate.
ICC? Please
Because
explain your answer.
abrogation
We
done
start
by
with
the
SP Soto.
Executive Department was unilateral.
Yes, obviously.
Kaya
Because
yun ang sinasabi
we
na
passed in the
obviously,
Senate a resolution
ang
and a
Senado
petition
ay,
we filed with,
pabor.
I filed with the
Doon,
Supreme
kami,
Court
majority
na
in the Senate,
sinasabi
pabor.
namin sa Supreme Court
Napag-usapan yan,
na
ibalik tayo.
desisyonan
At kung gusto
yung
mo
sinasabi
ng
na
ICC
kapag
dito
kami
sa
ay
atin,
pumasok sa
ayaw
isang agreement
mag-imbestiga.
or treaty,
Kung wala tayong tinatago,
two-thirds
wala
vote
tayong
ang
dapat
binibigay ng
katakutan.
Konstitusyon at ang
And,
binibigay sa
well,
Senado
I
at
wish I was
binibigay
able
namin.
to
Pero
be,
once
given a
mag-abrogate,
chance about
ang
the
sinasabi
corruption,
namin sa Senado,
perhaps
kailangan
later.
paalam din sa amin. Kailangan
Puntahan natin
ipasa
si
din namin
Mr.
na sinasabi
Serapio.
namin
Ano
payag
pong
kami
masasabi niyo
i-abrogate.
sa
Because
rejoining
the
ICC
abrogation
or not?
done by
As a
the
respectable member of
Executive
the
Department was
international
unilateral.
community, I
Kaya
joined
yun
the
ang
Senate
sinasabi na
President in
obviously,
stand
ang
that
Senado
we should
ay
rejoin the
pabor
International
doon,
Criminal
or kami,
Court.
majority in
And
the
for
Senate,
that
pabor,
matter, we should
napag-usapan
also
yan
be
at ibalik
part
tayo.
of all
At
other
kung gusto
international
mag-imbestiga ng ICC
organizations
dito sa atin,
which help
hayaan
promote
mag-imbestiga.
international
Kung wala tayong
harmony,
tinatago, wala
cooperation,
tayong
and
dapat
amity
katakutan.
that is provided for in our Constitution.
I wish I was able to
So,
given a chance
that's my
about
short
the corruption.
answer to this
Perhaps later.
And Doc
Sige.
Willie Ong, what is your
Puntahan
point
natin
of view
si
on
Mr.
this issue?
Serapio. Ano
Rejoin
po
or
masasabi
stay
niya sa
out of the
rejoining ICC
International
or not?
Court?
As a respectable member of the international
salamat,
community,
Rico.
I
Siyempre,
joined the
yes
Senate
tayo,
President in his
sasali
stand
tayo ulit sa
that we
ICC.
should
Pero ang
rejoin the
problema talaga
International
natin
Criminal
itong war
Court.
on drugs,
And
di ba?
for that matter,
I
we
think
should also
kahit
be
ito sa mga
part of all other international organizations
yung
which
criminal
help
justice
promote
approach,
international
minsan hindi
harmony,
yun ang
cooperation, and
pinakamaganda
amity
pag-solve ng war on
that is
drugs.
provided
Kailangan
for in
natin
our
yung
Constitution.
public health
So,
approach tulad na sinabi ni
that's my
Senator
short
Tito
answer
Soto.
to this question.
Ang addiction
And
po
Doc
kasi
Willie Ong,
may problema
what
po
is
sa
your point of
prefrontal
view
cortex.
on this
Dito
issue?
sa harap natin,
Rejoin
na-addict
or
talaga
stay
yung
out
tao.
of
Kung
the
di siya na-addict
International
sa
Court?
shabu, baka mag-nubain siya,
salamat,
o
Rico.
mag-cough syrup siya.
Siyempre,
sakit po siya. So 98% are mga users, 2% lang ang pushers. So kailangan focus natin science-based, kailangan bawasan ng stigma sa mga gumagamit, paparamihin natin yung mga libreng gamot. May gamot na kasi pang-solve o pang-cure sa mga nagiging drug addict. Hindi pwede yung ikukulong, tapos pagbalik, magiging addict sila ulit. At paparamihin yung psychologists, psychiatrists, at ililibre yung mga gamot dito. Sa Maynila, kay Mayor Isko, talagang 97% ay nahuhuli at hindi sila napapatay.
Napakinggan po natin yung mga response ng ating mga candidates that they will rejoin. What about cooperation with the ICC? And to what extent will you cooperate with the International Criminal Court? This question is for you, Walden Bello.
Well, the short answer is full cooperation, and we will make sure that there's a coordination between our justice system and the ICC, because 27,000 extrajudicial executions directed from Malacanang, President Duterte cannot escape this responsibility. And he should be prosecuted, and I believe he will be prosecuted and brought to a cell in The Hague. And we will support it. Calyode and I will in fact support this. But I would just like to say something. Yung rewriting of history, si Senator Soto, he's rewriting history. Noong kasagsagan ng war on drugs, did he say anything critical of the president? Did he protect Senator Laila de Lima, who was a member of the Senate? No? I mean, he was just supportive during that time when the president was destroying the integrity of the Senate. No? So, Senator Soto, please don't rewrite history. You were an ally of the president until just very recently. Okay? So, let's be frank with our kababayan naman. Huwag tayo magsisinungaling dito. Kaya, mahirap ho yan. Hindi ho ba anti-terror law itinulak nyo? Oh boy, come on.
Senate President.
I think former Congressman Bello has got his figures all wrong. Una, and then later I want to ask, what do you mean by ally? Because dahil kami magkaibigan, ally na ako. I have preserved the independence of the Senate always. And you can ask the members of the minority and the majority. Ngayon, ito, why do I say he's got it all wrong? Kaya ako open na ang ICC mag-imbestiga rito. From the 2016 up to the present, October 2021, there were 258,000 drug operations. This is on the issue of illegal drugs, of drug operations. There were 378,000 arrests. And there were only 6,021 related to these drug operations that died. So kung may EJK at sinasabi nila, binibintang nila kay President Duterte, dapat 378,000 ang patay. Hindi totoo yun, 21,000. Kung ano pinapadala nilang figures sa ICC,
Senate
hindi
President,
totoo yun.
your time is up.
You have the records speak for itself.
Senator Kiko, the question now is to you. Will you cooperate with the ICC, just apart from rejoining?
Yes, of course. In fact, we were one of those petitioners who questioned the withdrawal by the president of our membership in the ICC. So unfortunately, the Supreme Court did not share our view that the withdrawal should have been concurred by the Senate. So we will cooperate with the ICC. Yes. But again, a second petition was raised by the Senate President. Pero yung petition namin na kine-question yung pag-withdraw sa ICC ay hindi tinanggap ng Supreme Court. But yes, we will support first the rejoining and we will cooperate.
All right. Mr. Bello would like to rebut, but first we will go to Mr. Manny Lopez.
I support the war on drugs because I see the implications of our nation becoming a narco state. While on the same premise, I also believe that human rights should be protected. So the president took this lose-lose proposition by the horn and to bring in foreign interference based on their values, based on their perceptions, to actually intervene in Philippine affairs is not a good proposition, not a good idea for the sake of our country and for our people. And so I think while there is a clamor to rejoin the ICC, it has to be timely. And we have to look at this biggest issue that is hounding the Duterte administration in a balanced manner.
Balikan po natin si Mr. Bello for your rebuttal, sir.
Yes, again, wag ho tayo mag-rewrite ng history, no? Kasi lahat naman, all the key legislative initiatives na itinulak ni President Duterte, who was the biggest backer? It was Mr. Soto. The Anti-Terror Act, the Public Services Act, the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, the Foreign Investment Amendment Act, the Rice Tariffication Act, you name it. He never dissented from any major legislative push by the President. Kaya hindi independent ang kandidatong ito. I mean, wag ho tayo mag-rewrite ng history. And, by the way, Mr. Soto, you never defended your colleague, Senator De Lima, when she was hauled out of the Senate. I mean, you just begged President Duterte to fall on your knees, and you didn't even oppose it.
I did not.
Okay.
All right. Senate President, you were alluded to by Mr. Bello. Out of respect, this will be the final answer
Yes.
for this particular issue.
Why don't you ask Senator De Lima herself? Because I did not allow her to be arrested in the Senate. That's one thing. Now, all the bills and all the laws that former Congressman Bello mentioned are all for the benefit of the people. Anti-terror law, bakit? Gusto mo ba? Terrorist? Kampi tayo sa terrorist. Hahayaan natin sila gano'n na lang. Hindi ba? Yung foreign investments, bakit? Ayaw natin makika-recover ang ekonomiya. Nakasadlak na lang tayo. Baksak na lang. We should allow that. And then, I don't think it's wrong if I'm a friend of the President. As long as the Senate is independent, ang lahat ng pinasa namin sa Senado, kahit na pandemic, I was never absent, never late, kahit na to the detriment of my health. Wala akong pakialam because I was doing my job. Ano? I only relied on Psalm 91. That's it.
Okay. We move on to another topic. As we mentioned, yun na muna yung huli for this one. Yung susunod natin, a study finds that provinces where political dynasties thrive are generally poorer. Because of this, yung mga magkakapamilya po, hindi na nababantayan ng isa't isa, nawawalan ng checks and balances, nandiyan ang impunity, corruption, and even violence.
But this year, elections are still dominated by political dynasties. Candidates, we want to know where you stand on this. We'll find out after a short break. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation. The Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022.
Sure ka ba talaga dito?
Ano ka ba? Mabait si Papa. Pa! Si Pinky po.
Paano po, Mr. Fajardo? Ng supermarket dito ah. Bili tayo ng drinks. Ako na po ang drinks. Sige na. Gutom na ako.
What are debates for? Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question. And on February 27th, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land. They have confirmed they're a candidate, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability. Side by side, on one stage, on one network.
With corruption still entrenched.
Presidential Debate 2022.
Political dynasties.
The Constitution explicitly prohibits political dynasties, but 3 decades later, no law has been passed to enforce it. Critics say it's because lawmakers themselves come from political dynasties. Pending pa rin ang anti-political dynasty bills sa Senado at sa lower house. What can you do differently as Vice President? As we said, a study finds that provinces where political dynasties thrive are generally poorer. Let's begin with Carlos Serapio.
Salamat. Salamat. Ngayon lamang pumasok ang usapin o issue sa aming transition platform at program of action. Lahat ng pinag-uusapan kanina nakapasok sa lumang sistema. Kaya nahihirapan din kaming magtaas ng kamay at sumagot dito. Dahil ang banggaan sa ngayon ay sistema na luma at sistemang bago. Sa sistemang luma po, hindi mangyayari na malulutas at matutugunan ang layunin na tigilan ang political dynasty. Wala pong iniwan yan doon sa sinasabi ko na programa hindi pwedeng basahin ng isang sistema na incompatible to. Walang iniwan doon sa telepono na Nokia, hindi siya makakapagpatakbo ka ng Netflix dyan. Dahil ang power base ng operating system is an oligarchic and elitist dynastic power base. So there is incompatibility between the objective of ending political dynasties in the country and the operating system. So ang magagawa po namin ay yung aming sinusulong sa ngayon. Isinusulong namin ang paglalagay ng bagong sistema sa pagtatalaga ng puno bayanihang constitution sapagkat doon hindi kailangan ng enabling legislation. The constitution itself will provide that political dynasty should definitely be not tolerated.
Sunod naman po nating maririnig si Dr. Willie Ong.
Yes, oo. Bali, ako lang po tumatakbo sa pamilya ko. Wala kaming political dynasty. Pati si Mayor Isko, wala kayong mahanap na mga dumagoso na ibang tumakbo. Actually, syempre, ayaw natin ng political dynasty, di ba? Pero meron namang mga paraan. Masyado kasi tayong strict hindi naman matutuloy din to, hindi rin naman papasa. Pero pwede tayong gumawa ng mga variations. Baka pwede may gap muna. May isang term para at least hindi gamitin yung resources nung nahalal para tulungan yung anak niya, kamag-anak niya. Pwede rin naman na so kailangan may gap, tsaka may limit lang yung dami ng kamag-anak na po pwede. Siguro 2 o 3. Isang plano ni Mayor Isko na naisip namin dahil meron tayong 17 region Gusto niya yung pag-elect ng senators per region. Ito yung isang idea na magkakaroon ng 2 senator per region, so 34 lahat. So makakatulong to sa pag-develop ng mga regions natin. Merong tututok sa mga Muslim Mindanao at iba. At bababa din yung gastos ng mga senador sa pagtakbo. Isa po to ang iniisip natin para maging mas balanse yung Pilipinas, hindi puro Maynila lang po. Salamat.
Walden Bello, what are you going to do with the political dynasties?
Well, the Marcos dynasty and the Duterte dynasty, we're seeing how they represent really the greatest evil of the political system that we have. Which is why it is very important for our people, if you really want to oppose political dynasties, here is the 2 dynasties that they boast. The South and the North Raw will get together to eat up the Philippines. The task is up to our voters. Do not elect these dynastic cliques coming to power. Make sure that you tell them that you are not going to come to power just to eat up the Philippines between the 2 of you. So nasa sa voters niyang ngayon. Okay? And that is why we are appealing, don't vote for these dynasts. And I'm really terribly sorry that Mayor Duterte is not here to face the people. She is a coward. Just like Bongbong Marcos is a fucking coward.
Open naman po tayo just in case gustong magpadala ng response ni Mayor Sara Duterte.
Oh, I would love to debate her. Wow!
Moving on, still in politics, ito po para kay SP Soto. Surveys show former Senator Bongbong Marcos is leading by a wide margin. Our question is two-pronged. What if both of you win, what would a Marcos Soto administration look like, and how do you plan on working with the former senator?
I have not given it a thought. In my sphere, we are working on the presidency of Senator Lacson. So hindi ko naiisip yun. Basta sa akin, kung sakasakaling kami ay pala rin, binigyan kami ng pagkakataon, I will use my experience and my competence in facing and addressing issues of national concerns. After 30 years, palagay ko naman ay nakahanda ako dito. So ganun ang aking thinking. So wala akong iniisip na kung iba ang mananalo at this point.
And if Mayor Sara Duterte was here, we would also have asked her a similar question. If VP Robredo wins, what would a Robredo Duterte administration look like, and how does she plan to work with Leni Robredo? And if Mayor Duterte would like to answer the question, of course, later on, she is welcome to do so on CNN Philippines.
At nandito naman yung running mate ni Vice President Leni Robredo. So si Senator Kiko, we have the same question for you. What would a Marcos Pangilinan administration look like? And ano ang plano nyo para makatrabaho ang dating senador?
Well, kaya ang hiling natin sa ating mga botante ay suportahan yung Leni Kiko tandem para hindi magulo. Para nagkakaisa ang presidente at vice-presidente, yan ang pinakamainam para sa tapat na gobyerno. No? At iaangat natin nga ang lahat. So yun ang ating pakay. Ngayon, having said that, magtatrabaho tayo para sa mga magsasaka at mangingisda at food security, anuman ang maging resulta ng halalan kung tayo ipalarin.
And Rizalito David would also like to have his statement, because there's various combinations, no? What if it's a Rizalito David or a Bongbong Marcos or Leni Robredo presidency? How are you planning to cooperate with them, Mr. David?
I think malinaw naman yung aking advocacy. No? Kung sino man ang uupong Pangulo, i-offer ko yung aking sarili para tumulong. Subalit kung ayaw naman niya, itutuloy ko pa rin yung advocacy ko outside of the government. Yun lang naman ang pwede nating gawin. Ano? Kapag nagsalita na ang taong bayan, kung si Bongbong Marcos ang mananalo, which is very sad, no? Wala na tayong magagawa doon. Babantayan na lang natin kung ano ang gagawin niya. Kapag siya ay ng abuso, gagamitin natin yung Office of the Vice President para siya ay, kumbagay, labanan doon sa kanyang pang-aabuso.
Our next question goes to Carlos Serapio. The 2022 budget of the Office of the Vice President is over 700 million pesos, and that is 21% lower than last year. How do you plan to spend that amount as Vice President?
Well, we have designed, that means the political party has designed the Office of the Vice President, not just to support the President, and also at the same time to abide by the constitutional provision on the role of the Vice President. But we want the Office of the Vice President to be a table of idealism. It will be a table of philosophy, of advocacy, of aspirations, of vision. Most especially, it will be a table for the young people, for the young generation. Yung experience namin sa halos 50 taon ng pakikipaglaban para sa pagbabago ng ating sistema, ay iyon ang maibabahagi natin sa ating mga kabataan. Sa ngayon kasi, ang nakikita nila, puro yung away sa kasalukuyang sistema. Labanan ng kulay at labanan lamang ng kung sino ang mas mabuti o sino ang mas masama. We are in a state of moral convolution. And unfortunately, our politics, our elections have not really been able to resolve this issue of moral convolution. And therefore, we have to introduce what we call as strategic, innovative exercises in the political process, so that our young people will see something different than what is going on with our politics. So yung budget na yung kakasya na yun para namin maisagawa iyan.
Ngayon naman po, pakinggan natin si Mr. Ronnie Lopez. Paano niyo po gagastusin ang budget ng OVP?
Before I answer that, can I backtrack a bit on the political dynasty? I'd like to say that in fairness to our political spectrum, there are good dynasties, there are bad dynasties, and there are terrible dynasties. And to avoid the prospect of having terrible dynasties, we have to do something. We have to initiate some initiatives, some reforms to prevent the occurrence or the incumbency of bad dynasties. And I think this is high time because, the political landscape is now packed with dynasties. And if the country is being uplifted as a result of this leadership spectrum of having more dynasties, then so be it, if that's good for the country. But apparently, we are lagging behind as a country and as a people. And so therefore, we propose, under the Labour Party, a structural and political reform agenda that will empower the people once more. And this is through a people's initiative. A functional people's initiative with a prescribed implementation guidelines that could enable ordinary citizens to legislate, to amend laws, or rescind laws.
This is a CNN Philippines special presentation at the University of Santo Tomas.
When we come back, we'll ask questions about taxes. You're watching the Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022.
What are debates for? Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question. And on February 27th, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land. They have confirmed their attendee, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability. Side by side, on one stage, on one network.
The year has just begun. With corruption still entrenched.
What are debates for? Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question. February 27, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land. They have confirmed they're a candidate, ready to face the nation, ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability.
And they are answering your questions. I'm Rico Hizon.
And I'm Ruth Cabal, and we want to thank everyone who sent their questions to us through our social media pages. Ang daming nagtutweet at nagtatrending nga tayo. Also, may mga lumapit din sa ating mga reporters and even our stringers from the provinces who sent in their questions.
Our next topic is about taxes. It's a specific question for Walden Bello. In an interview with CNN Philippines, you said that the country's billionaires should pay more taxes to generate more funds for the poor. We'd like to know more about these additional taxes to the rich that you are talking about, and how exactly, Mr. Bello, will these funds be allocated to the poor?
Well, we propose, Calyode and I, my presidential candidate, we propose that we would tax the top 250 to 500 billionaires in this country to 1 to 3% of their wealth, which means income, land, etc., etc. Now, this will yield about 1 trillion pesos, which would come to about 20-25% of the budget and more. Okay? Now, this is quite small. Okay? If you look at taxation rates in other countries, they go on the top levels, 20, 30, 35% in the US, something like around 39% in Germany. So our rich have no cause to complain. So this is going to be made as transfer payments to social services. Is this going to be possible? Of course, it is possible. One, it is very small part of their income. Okay. Two is that there are, in fact, many people among the rich in this country at this point, especially the younger rich, who are saying that we really need to be socially responsible. And then three is even Joey Salceda has said, that the rich now have to pay because they benefited from the pandemic. So this is a very sound thing.
Itutuloy natin ng issue dito sa buwis, and Senator Soto, you and your running mate, Senator Ping Lacson, have criticized the Finance Department's proposal for new taxes to manage government debt. Sabi po ninyo, ayusin ang pagkolekta ng buwis. How will you resolve the collection of taxes?
Digitalization. That is the answer, number one answer at the Bureau of Customs. We have given them the funds for it already, hindi kinukumpleto. Bakit? They want human intervention. Once we remove human intervention, we remove corruption, and we improve the collection of taxes. Ganun mismo, kahit sa BIR, kailangan improve natin collection of taxes. Hindi pa pwedeng dagdag ng tax. Nagbawas nga kami. We passed in the CREATE law that yung lahat ng below 250,000 a year ang kinikita, hindi dapat magbayad ng income tax. Pinasa din namin yun.
Okay, moving on to Mr. Manny Lopez, who is an economist. Your question, to increase taxes or not, at ano pong klase ng buwis?
I think the fiscal side of governance in this country has to improve. And there is a lot of room for improvement. First and foremost, the collection of taxes should be more efficient. Any avoidance of taxes should be penalized. And e-governance, as the good Senate President has mentioned, is a part of our legislative and executive agenda to improve efficiency in tax collection. On the same premise, on the other side of the coin, is to make best use of our taxes. And this means elimination of the leakages in the public finance sector, make our project implementation and program implementation more efficient, and there should be better auditing procedures to make sure that every tax collected from the people should be spent wisely. So it's an overall picture. And the Public Finance Reform Management Act, which remains to be implemented up to this time, has not been implemented. And given the mandate to assume a more responsible position in this republic, we will make sure that our taxation system, our fiscal policy, will be improved dramatically. Thank you.
And since we are on the topic of tax collection, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR, has been identified by the Anti-Corruption Task Force as one of the graft-prone agencies. Once upon a time, there was even a proposal to abolish the Bureau. Former President and Vice President turned lawmaker Gloria Macapagal Arroyo proposed in 2017 to replace the BIR with a National Revenue Authority. Ang sinabi niya, there is a need to address growing taxpayer dissatisfaction and the increasing perception of systemic corruption in the BIR. Our question is, as Vice President, how will you help end the systemic corruption in the BIR? Senator Pangilinan, you have 90 seconds.
Well, again, I will go back to, you have to punish swiftly the guilty. Hindi pa pwedeng hindi pinaparusahan ang mga nagkakasala. Ang nangyayari kasi, pag ikaw ay magnakaw nga ng mas marami, mas meron kang abogado, makakalusot ka dahil mabagal ang sistema ng katarungan. In the long run, you have to modernize your judiciary. You cannot have a modern judiciary with a third world budget. So we really have to increase support for our judiciary. Dagdagan pa ang benefits ng mga huwes, mga prosecutor, ng mga court staff para maging efficient. Increase the budget. If we can double it, why not? And in exchange, dapat mabilis ang paglilitis. Ngayon kasi 6 na taon ang average na paglilitis eh. Dapat yan mabawasan sa 3 o 2 taon na lamang. Dahil pag mas marami ang napaparusahan sa mabalis na paraan, talagang magkakaroon ng takot at respeto sa ating mga batas. So that's how you address corruption and that's how you address itong misfeasance or pang-aabuso sa pwesto. Hindi lang ng BIR at iba pang mga ahensya. Balikan ko rin lang, between imposing more taxes and having a more efficient system of collection, we should prioritize the latter. Dahil hindi nakokolekta. 700 billion pesos a year, sabi ng COA, ang nawawala sa corruption. Siyempre, ang pakiramdam ng taxpayer, ibinabayad ko sa inyo, ninanakaw lang ninyo. So kinakailangan talaga ng mabilis na paglilitis at parusa ng corruption issues.
So, Senator Pangilinan, paano natin pwedeng iksian ang paglilitis? Alam natin dito ang hustisya sa Pilipinas matagal sa mga korte.
Unang-una, fill up all the vacancies in our court system. There are about 25% of our courts walang judge, kaya mabagal. To add more courts para yung dami ng kaso ay hindi na overloaded ang court system natin. And of course, hire more judges, give them more support, and then ito nga, convene the JELAC, which is the Judiciary Executive Legislative Advisory Council. The Senate President, the Speaker of the House, the Chief Justice, and the President of the country sits in the JELAC. It has been convened twice in 2008. It should be convened when the next administration comes in. And we talk about budgetary support. We talk about magkano pa ang kailangan para talagang marami na ang ating courts para mabawasan o bumilis ang paglilitis. Pagka masyadong maraming kaso, isang judge, mabagal talaga. Pag mas marami ang korte, mas marami ang judges, mas mabilis ang desisyon. At magiging 2 years na lang yan.
Balikan natin yung original na tanong kay Dr. Willie Ong. Ano po ang gagawin nyo para labanan ang systemic corruption sa BIR?
Yes, talaga mahirap talaga magbayad ng tax dito sa atin eh. Minsan gusto mo na magbayad ng tunay, ayaw pa rin nila tanggapin, kailangan may lagay. Tama naman po sinabi ni Senator Tito Soto, kailangan i-computerize. Alisin yung usap ng tao sa tao, dyan makukuha yung corruption. Pwede natin i-simplify yung pagbayad ng tax. Isa pa, pwede natin i-broaden, paramihin yung nagbabayad ng tax. Ayon sa pag-aaral, parang 19% lang ang nagbabayad eh. Kaya nahihirapan yung 19%. Kung mas marami ang magbabayad, mas magaan ito. At i-encourage natin yung mga tao na magbayad. Kasi yung buwis na binabayad nyo, yan ang pang-sweldo sa teacher, di ba? Para proud tayo na magbayad. Pwede rin ayusin yung BIR eh. May concept na i-retire mo, tapos i-rehire mo yung iba. Pwede natin gawin to para malinis yung mga bad apples. Tuloy-tuloy din yung tulong natin sa MSME. Dagdag ko lang sa ibang bansa, meron silang philanthropy mindset eh. Meron silang Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, ang laking pera binibigay, long-term tulong sa Amerika. Sa atin, yung mayayaman natin, parang walang philanthropy mindset eh. Pero kulang tayo dyan. Kung yung mga mayayaman sa Pilipinas, gagawa ng long-term projects para ma-alleviate, matulungan tayong mga mahihirap. Salamat po.
Walden Bello, your response.
Well, I think that, let's be honest, no? Alam naman natin tax breaks na binibigay ng ating executive as well as the Senate and the House, no? Yung napakalaking tax break, yan yung create law. Binabaan yung corporate income tax from 30% to 20%. And for foreign businesses, from 30 to 25%. Ang laki, trilyon na nawala sa atin yan. Ang tagal na ng agenda nila, even before pandemic. Pero ginamit tayo, they used the pandemic to get what they wanted. So, Senator Soto, Senator Pangilinan, pareho kayo nagboto sa CREATE Act that gave big tax breaks. So what are you saying, that you are not guilty of this process? Tama na yan, kalokohan na yan.
Senator Soto.
When we pass laws, it's the Congress that pass. Bakit pinag-iinitan mo kami dalawa?
Senator Soto.
Well, I don't think we should, huwag na natin patulan yung mga ganong style.
May I first?
Kiko?
Yes.
Kiko. And then we go to Mr. Manny Lopez.
Yes. Again, the issue of taxation is really a very sticky issue, no? Pero, nasa gitna tayo ng pandemya, hindi lang yung maliliit, pati yung mga malalaki na naapektuhan ng pandemya, yung negosyo nagsasara. And the CREATE law precisely, binabaan ito as a means to be able to provide support. Even the biggest companies like itong mga airline companies, billion din ang nawawala sa kanila dahil dito sa pandemya. So we voted in favor of that because we recognized na iba ang kondisyon sa ngayon because of the pandemic. Unprecedented yung bagsak ng ating ekonomiya, unprecedented itong kawalan ng hanap buhay at trabaho. Kaya dapat unprecedented din ang kilos. I can understand yung concern ni Professor Bello regarding itong mga tax perks and tax breaks. But because it was a different, never before experienced pandemic which really killed, bagsak talaga yung ekonomiya, we felt it best to provide assistance and support for companies.
Mr. Manny Lopez.
I have a question to my fraternity brad, Senator Kiko Pangilinan. A very simple question lang, Brad. Kaya nyo bang, since you mentioned about judicial independence and objectivity, kaya nyo bang litisin ang fellow senator nyo kung nagkaroon ng malaking issue or participation in graft and corruption? I happen to be a participant of the Million People March. At ipinagmarcha po namin yan. And maraming mga legislators ang nasangkot dyan, reportedly about 100. Mabuti na lang ang fraternity brad ko, hindi kasali doon. And si Senator Soto. But as a general question, kaya nyo bang litisin ang kapwa nyo senador kung nasali, nasangkot sa graft and corruption?
Well, that's...
Very short answer lang po.
Merong ethics committee sa ating Senado, but of course, paglilitis ang pinag-usapan, sa hudikatura yan, no? And in fact, ang nangyari nga, nitong nakaraan, 3 senador ang nakulong, no? Dahil dun sa paglilitis sa Napoles Fund. Pero pag, nung nanalo ng bagong administration, o bago pa man at nung nanalo, yun, nabaliktad yung sitwasyon.
Senate President Tito Soto. And then finally,
Yes.
before we go to the break, Mr. Serapio.
Yes, the answer
And
is
in fact, ang nangyari,
there is a committee
at ang
on
nangyari
ethics.
nga,
If there is a
nitong
case
nakaraan,
filed against a
tatlong senador ang nakulong.
We will investigate.
No, dahil dun sa paglilitis sa Napoles
Briefly,
Fund. Pero pag nung nanalo
Mr. Serapio.
ng bagong administration,
Sistemang ito has reached its point of incompetence. No matter kung anumang subsystem or sectoral reform ang gawin, hindi po maaayos yan.
Nabaliktad
ang pinakasagot
yung
talaga
sitwasyon.
rito
Senate
ay
President
total
Tito Soto.
system
And then finally,
change po.
before we go to the break,
Kinakailangan tumawid
Mr.
tayo
Serapio.
from the-
Yes, the answer is in the affirmative. There is a committee on ethics. If there is a case filed against a senator, we will investigate, no matter what.
Briefly, Mr. Serapio.
Ang sistemang ito has reached its point of incompetence. No matter kung anumang subsystem or sectoral reform ang gawin, hindi po maaayos yan. Ang pinakasagot talaga rito ay total system change po. Kinakailangan tumawid tayo from the old political system to a new one. This is in the nature ng unitary system will always have this kind of problem po. Ganun po ang mangyayari dyan.
And speaking of corruption, it will be one of the priority topics in tomorrow's presidential debate with our very own Pio Ontiveros and Pinky Webb. Tune in to CNN Philippines for the presidential debate at 5 p.m.
You're watching the Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022 right here at the University of San. Again, thank you very much, USC. And thank you to Very Reverend Father Richard Ang, the Rector of USC. After the break, we'll shift our focus to our most precious resource, our children. How do we keep educating and protecting them? We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Suki! Siya ang bagong siga ng Senado, General Eleazar. Siga? Paano sa pelikula? Tunay na siga si General Eleazar.
Sipag at galing. Sipag sa pagreforma ng PNP. Galing sa paglaban sa krimen.
Bugok at abusado, kalaboso! Inalaban niya tayo.
Marami tayong ilalaban para sa Pilipino, lalo na sa peace and order at seguridad para umangat ang ekonomiya. Dahil ang laban nyo, laban ko.
General Eleazar, Iboto, Senador, 23 sa balota.
Araw-araw, palakasin ang resistensya. Ano man ang dumating. Mag-Diabetasol. May vitamins pamparesistensya at VitaDigest pang-manage ng blood sugar at gutom. Kaya't huwag mag-diabetes. Mag-Diabetasol.
Carl, pasok na. Love, di mo ba nakita? Ang dami nila.
GG na ba mata mo? Tara sa EO. EO Executive Optical. State-of-the-art facilities and expert eye care for your progress.
Kailan nagpa-check up tayo sa EO?
EO, love your eyes.
Sa One Pacman Party List, lagi kang ipaglalaban. Knockout ang mahal na gamutan.
Depensa laban sa kahirapan.
Servisyo ngayong pandemya.
One Pacman Party List, laging maasahan. 161 sa balota.
Happy birthday! Pag ganito ang drama, ang cute. Pero di cute ang dramang dala ng lagnat. Magparacetamol Calpol. Works within 15 minutes. Gentle sa tiyan. Doctor prescribed Paracetamol Calpol.
Napansin ko, di na sinusuot ni Mama ang pustiso niya at di komportable.
Baka gumalaw ang ngipin at di na magkasya ang pustiso pag di sinuot araw-araw. Use Polident para mas komportable ang kapit. Mag-Polident araw-araw.
Lazada 3 birthday opening sale. 1 month celebration with free shipping. Flash sales at Diesel Deals. 3 birthday opening sale.
Starts March 3 to 7.
Lazada.
Mukhang magkakasubukan na naman tayo ah.
Binabayo na po ng bagyong Ulysses ang malaking bahagi ng
Mas
Luzon.
marami pang lugar ang posibleng maapektuhan ng El Nino.
Naitala sa Dagupan City noong Sabado ang pinakamataas na heat index.
Mo kaming subukan. Matinding init man yan, umalakas na bagyo. Hindi mo kayang Vulcasil ko. Vulcasil. Para sa akin, ito ang tipong subok ng panahon.
Kahit mo ito, hindi ba yan? Bostik Epoxy! Bostik Epoxy! LLN, El General, LLN, El Capitan, LLN Supremo! Samahan ng mga palaban. El General, ito'y matibay. El Capitan, ito'y makapit. El Supremo, ito'y matatag. Bostik Epoxy, palaban!
This is the CNN Philippines special presentation, the Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022, right here at the University of Santo Tomas. I'm Ruth Cabal.
And here with us on stage are 7 out of the 9 vice presidential candidates. I'm Rico Hizon.
The UNICEF reported that since the pandemic was declared, we have seen an increase in children who have been left hungry, isolated, abused, and anxious. In addition, the pandemic has caused the most severe education disruption in the world. Dito po natin nakita yung isang problema sa bansa natin, yung gap, yung pagitan sa rich and poor students, lalo na pagdating sa internet access. Ang question natin, as Vice President, how can you make sure that the internet is more accessible and more affordable to the students? We want to hear from Dr. Willie Ong.
Yes, salamat sa question, Ruth. Talaga itong education talaga pinaka-problema natin kasama yung sa internet. Nakakalungkot talaga po yung mga datos sa mga bata natin, 33% malnourished or stunted, yung maliit ang height. Dati ang data, 50% may bulati sa tiyan. Paano mag-aaral kung anemic? 10,000 na bata namamatay bawat taon sa diarrhea. Maruming tubig, walang pang ospital. Kaya yung access sa internet, may plano kami ni Mayor Isko dyan sa fiber optic na gagawin niya. Pagdating sa school, ano problema natin? Bullying. Nako, sa Twitter natin ngayon, baka marami na nag-away. Philippines, 45% ang bullying. Sa ibang bansa, 8% lang. Kaya kita nyo naman internet natin. Isa pa, ito medyo hindi alam ito ng kababayan natin. 31% lang ang growth mindset sa Pilipino. Isabihin, yung isip niya, kaya niya maging mataas. Yung kaya mangarap, mababa tayo doon. Budget sa education, itataas natin. Sweldo ng teachers, grade 11 lang. Sa Maynila, ang dami tinayo ni Mayor Isko. Hospital, libreng tablet sa students, 20 gigs, 1,000 kada buwan binibigay. Mental health, linya ko po yan. Talagang tututukan ko yan kasi walang libre dito sa Pilipinas. Mahal pag nagkasakit sa depression, bipolar at iba pa.
Senate President Tito Soto, your views on more accessibility and affordability of the internet to students.
There is much to be desired yung sa kilos ng Executive Department pagdating dito. Because nung tinatalakay namin yung budget para sa 2022, ang DICT nangangailangan ng mga 18 billion para sa improvement ng broadband. At para maisaayos nationwide at libre para sa ating mga kababayan. Ang napasa at ang pinayagan ng DBM, 800,000 18 billion yung kailangan 800,000 Tinanong ko nga Senator Honasan, I know this because Senator Lacson is the one handling the budget of the DICT. And then tinanong namin Senator Honasan, ano magagawa niyo ng 800,000? Wala daw. Yun ang isang problema. Now, as far as the educational freedom of the institutions are concerned, I am all for it. Meron lang akong gusto idagdag sa educational system natin. Dapat yung grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, meron drug abuse resistance education program Pagtungtong nila ng 13 years old, alam na nila, masama yung droga, masisira ang buhay ko dyan, masisira ang pamilya ko, masisira ang kinabukasan ko. Ganun dapat yan eh. We will be saving more than 50% of these young boys na sila ay malulung dyan. Kung nandun na kaagad yung drug abuse resistance education program natin.
May we hear from Senator Kiko Pangilinan?
Yung Robredo Pangilinan Tandem ay mayroong plano para sa edukasyon. Immediately, pag-upo, yung 90 billion, isang gadget bawat estudyante. Isa yan, para talagang mabigyan ng sapat na suporta. Pangalawa, 300 pesos Wi-Fi load allowance kada isang buwan habang siya ay nag-aaral. So 90 billion yan immediately. Pero ang matinding problema din na dapat tugunan ay yung malnutrition ng ating mga anak. Paano ka mag-aaral ng maayos kung kumakalamang sikmura mo? Sabi nga, 95 young people are dying every day, our children, because of malnutrition. At yun ang ating kinakailangan gawin. Because we are food insecure. Yung stunting. Bakit stunting? Bakit maliliit? Bakit hindi lumalaki? Kulang ang nutrisyon, kulang ang timbang, kulang ang tangkad. Kinakailangan talaga tugunan yung food security. At paano natin gagawin yan? Dodoblehin ang budget ng agrikultura at titriplehin ang tiyak na yung dagdag na budget, madadagdagan ng ayuda at suporta sa ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda para tumaas ang kanilang ani at tumaas ang kanilang huli at pagka marami ng supply ng pagkain sa ating merkado, bababa ang presyo ng pagkain. Yun nga, hello pagkain, goodbye gutom.
And this is a question for Mr. Serapio. UNICEF has also found that the Philippines is the epicenter of the live stream sexual abuse trade. Research found a 265% spike in online sexual abuses between March and May 2020. As Vice President, we want to know what difference can you make to protect our children against online abuse? Mr. Serapio, of 90 seconds.
Ang magagawa po natin dyan ay paggamit din po ulit ng teknolohiya para iyan ay ating ma-monitor ng mabuti. Ngayon po, gusto ko rin lamang pong sabihin, dahil ang pinag-uusapan lagi nga ay yung mga bilyon-bilyon na i-appropriate natin. Meron po bang na-allocate na pondo para sa ganitong mga programa? Kung wala po, kinakailangan pag-isipan kung saan kukunin yan doon sa mga ibinigay na pondo. Dahil ang bawat programa, kailangan ng pondo. At ang lahat ng papasok na bagong manunungkulan sa susunod na administrasyon, ang kanilang gagamitin ay yun na pondo na sa General Appropriations Act o na budget na. Kaya po, doon sa tanong ulit, kakailanganin po talaga niyan ng teknolohiya para na sa ganon ma-monitor ng gusto itong nangyayari po ng mga yan. Meron po niyan na ganyan technology kaagad. Napakabilis pong makita niyan.
Criminals also took advantage of the growing number of Filipinos doing financial transactions online. The Credit Card Association of the Philippines said credit card fraud surged by 21% since the pandemic started in 2020. Tighter regulations on SIM card registration is now one step away from becoming a law. This question is for Rizalito David. How will you crack down on criminals, cyber criminals, and safeguard the people's personal information? Mr. David.
Well, the law is already in place. It just have to be implemented properly.
Why do you think it's not being implemented properly?
Perhaps there's yung kakulangan nga ng political will and yung desire natin to really help out, no? Yung ating kapwa para maiwasan yung mga ganyang bagay. Wala na akong ibang maisasagot doon eh. Dahil nandiyan na yung batas eh. Nasa executive department na lang yan kung paano nila gagawin. Ano? I don't know if some of them are even involved in these things. That's why nakakalusot. No? Ang dali lang naman yan eh. Even yung cyber sex, no? Kontrolado natin yung mga ISPs. Bakit hindi yun minomonitor maigi ng ating gobyerno? Lahat naman dadaan sa ISPs, di ba? So bakit nangyayari pa rin ito, no? So posibleng merong kontsabahan dahil malaking pera ang involved diyan. paminsan-minsan naguhulihan, pero on the whole, pera yung pinag-uusapan. Corruption pa rin yung pinupuntahan itong question na ito, no?
And Manny Lopez, your views on cybercriminality and safeguarding people's personal information.
Yes, being a technology management professional for several decades, I think a real problem is competence, technical competence. Our implementers, our policymakers are not really keen or properly equipped on the matter of technologies and management. To cite you one very concrete example, right in DICT, I concur with the observations of the industry that we need better leadership, more technically equipped, and really experienced on the area of technology management. But unfortunately, this is not the case. And so cybercrime is proliferating in the same manner that financial technologies is increasing. As a matter of fact, the application of financial technologies has been embraced because of the circumstances that we were in during the time of pandemic. And so accordingly, there was a corresponding increase in cybercrime because of the lack of proper guidelines, the lack of proper monitoring, and it bottoms down on the lack of competence.
Presidential candidates, and we have one final question after the break. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation, the Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022, right here at the University of Santo Tomas. Stay with us.
Toothpaste ba panlinis mo ng pustiso? Nagdudulot ito ng gasgas na maaaring pamahayan ng bakterya. Ang pustiso ay mas malambot kaysa totoong ngipin. Use Polident Cleanser that kills 10 times more bacteria than regular toothpaste. Polident.
Sa One Pacman Party List, lagi kang paglalaban. Knockout ang mahal na gamutan.
Depensa laban sa kahirapan.
Serbisyo ngayong pandemya.
One Pacman Party List, laging maasahan. 161 sa balota.
Girl, pasok na.
Lap, di mo ba nakita? Ang dami nila.
Gigi na ba mata mo? Tara sa EO. EO Executive Optical. State-of-the-art facilities and expert eye care for your progress.
Kailan nagpa-check up tayo sa EO?
EO, love your eyes.
Project finish!
Ang purpose ng dessert, i-reward ang masipag with layers of sarap.
I-Nestle All-Purpose Cream mo. Para rich, thick, and creamy. Reward ready! Finish!
Nestle All-Purpose Cream.
In everything you do, make sure you choose what's true.
We always follow our hearts, so true adventures come our paths.
Dreams and aspirations, giving spark to all our passions.
Stay true and you'll know what to do.
And choose the bonds that are true.
We choose what's true.
March 3 to 7.
Ang natitirang happiness mo. Lisa! Kakagawin pa ng pagod at sakit sa'yo. Mag-Enervon everyday. Dami mang ganaps, may tulong sa more immunity plus more energy. Para sa happiness mo, take Enervon.
Unilab yan. Pag may pagsubok, ilabas ang iyong tapang na di susuko. Nescafe Original. May tapang ng dagdag na kape, kaya kapeng-kape ang sarap at aroma. Muli tayong babangon pag may tapang na di susuko. Nescafe Original.
Sa One Pacman Party List, lagi kang ipaglalaban. Knockout ang mahal na gamutan.
Depensa laban sa kahirapan.
Serbisyo ngayong pandemya.
One Pacman Party List, laging maasahan. 161 sa balota.
You are joining us live at the Quadricentennial Pavilion at the University of Santo Tomas. And we have one question left for our candidates, which will serve as our closing statement in this CNN Philippines Vice Presidential Debate. I'm Rico Hizon.
And I'm Ruth Cabal, and here is our final question, which will serve as your closing statement. The Constitution states that in case of death, permanent disability, or resignation of the President of the Philippines, the Vice Presidential Act as Chief Executive. Question, candidates, are you ready to assume the presidency should an emergency happen? And what would that leadership look like? We start the question with Senator Soto, kasi kanina nung intro, we started with Congressman Bello. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I have built consensus with 23 republics as president of the Senate for almost 4 years. We believe in our competence, experience, and I think we will be guided well, not only by the good Lord, but of course the experience that they've built. Katapangan. With this, I believe we will lead.
Be ready to assume the presidency should the occasion arise. I have thought a lot about presenting myself as a candidate in this coming election. I discerned, and I came to the conclusion that the 50 years of experience that I had been blessed be part of the advocacy work of the just ordering of society will serve me in good stead. Should, again, I will be called to perform the duties of president. One can only do so with strength and courage if he depends on the source of all power. And that to me is the spirit of reason and the source of all reason, the source of all life, and that is God. So again, with the blessing of God, I think I am ready, willing, and able.
Walang trabaho, ginugutom. Sa pagkakataong yun, titiyakin natin, uunahin natin yung mga nasa laylayan, yung mga mahihirap nating mga kababayan. Bata pa lang akong abogado, mas mahirap. Ako na ay nagbibigay ng libreng serbisyo legal sa ating mga kababayan. Biko nga, isang bilaong biko ang bayad sa akin ng mga manggagawa. Hanggang sa ngayon, mga magsasaka at mangingisda ang ating ipinaglalaban dahil sila ang kapos nating mga kababayan. Hindi makatarungan na kung sino pang nagpapakain sa atin, sila ang bibigay ng libreng serbisyo legal sa ating mga kababayan na ang isang tatang bilaong na nakilala ko, 87 years old, nagsasaka pa, baon pa sa utang. Hanggang sa ngayon, that is an injustice that is not acceptable, and that's the kind of leadership that they can rely on us and Vice President Leni Robredo. Uunahin yung mga kapos. Hindi katanggap-tanggap. Maraming salamat. Na ang isang
Dr. Willie Ong, handa po ba kayong
na nakilala
humalili
ko,
bilang
87
presidente,
years old,
and what
nagsasaka
would
pa
that
noong
leadership
pa sa
look like?
That is a leadership
Salamat,
that is
Ruth.
not acceptable.
Ako po ay
And that's
isang
the kind of
doktor,
leadership that we can
internist, and
rely on us
cardiologist.
and
Mahirap po
and
maging
Vice President
cardiologist.
Lenny Robredo.
Kami ang tumitingin sa
Uunahin yung
code
mga
blue. Pag may namatay, pag may nagloko yung
Dr.
puso ng
Willie Ong,
pasyente,
handa po ba kayong
we have to
humalili
decide
bilang
in 10
presidente,
seconds.
and what would
Ito
that
ba ang
leadership
gamot?
look like?
Ito, isang pagkakamali ko, pwede siyang mabuhay o mamatay. Yun stressful, pero sanay ako sa ganun. Dito sa gobyerno, marami kang advisor, pwede ka pa maghintay ng isang linggo bago mag-decide. So tuloy-tuloy yung polisiya na plano ng aming program ni Mayor Isko. Meron kaming bilis kilos, 10-point program. Madalas for the past 4 months, ito po yung ginagawa namin. So tutuloy lang po natin to. Ako po ay isang doktor, 27 years, libre ang serbisyo sa ating kababayan. Alam niyo, wala akong kaaway dito. Pwede naman tumakbo sa politika, walang kaaway. At sabihin ko na lang po, wala po akong campaign funds. Hindi ako tumatanggap sa kahit sinong negosyante. Kung tsatsamba tayo maging presidente, di makaka-decide ako ng napakaganda. Kung ano yung mga decision nyo sa West Philippine Sea, sa mining, yun ang magiging decision ko. Kasi walang humahawak sa akin. Kaya ko tumakbo, Facebook lang, at sa tulong at pagmamahal ninyo. Dito ako magsaserve kung saan nyo po kayo ilalagay. Maraming salamat po. Mahal na mahal ko po kayo. God bless po sa ating lahat.
Next, we have Mr. Manny Lopez.
Yun ang magiging decision ko. Kasi walang humahawak sa akin.
Ako lang po
Kaya
ang
ko tumakbo, Facebook
kandidato
lang, at sa
para
tulong at
vice-presidente
pagmamahal ninyo.
na walang
Dito ako
ka-official
magsaserve kung saan nyo
tandem
po kayo
na
ilalagay.
presidente.
Maraming salamat po.
But
mahal na mahal ko po
I
kayo.
will fully
God
commit
bless po sa ating lahat.
to support the
Next, we have
best,
Mr. Manny
most
Lopez.
qualified, and committed
Ako lang po
presidential
ang,
candidate who will
kandidato
serve
para
the interest
vice-presidente
and welfare
na
of
walang
our people.
ka-official tandem na
I
presidente.
was tasked by the
But
Labour Party leadership
I will fully
to seek the vice presidency
the best,
in our collective
most
effort
qualified,
to help
and
rebuild the
committed
economy,
presidential
address
candidate who will
this
serve
unprecedented
the
crisis,
interest and welfare of our people.
come up with proper solutions
I was tasked
that will
by the
effect
Labour
real
Party
change
leadership
and reform.
to seek the vice
Build a
presidency
strong,
in our
just,
collective
and a
effort
progressive nation
to help rebuild the
to help
economy,
make lives better
address
for our
this
long-suffering
unprecedented
people.
crisis,
Ako po,
come up with proper solutions that will effect real change and reform. Build a strong, just, and a progressive nation to help make lives better for our long-suffering people. Ako po, bilang isang ekonomista at management professional, we came up with a 10-point socio-economic development and political reform agenda to help uplift the lives of our people. And bilang vice presidential
We are destined to greatness. Yan po ang pangarap ng Diyos para sa atin, subalit hindi nangyayari dahil may mga tao na pinipigilan na mangyari ang mga pagkakataon. Kung yan po ay babagsak sa akin, tatanggapin ko po ng buong lugod at isasagawa ang mga bagay na dapat gawin para sa ating bayan. Katulad ng aking nasabi, we are destined to greatness. And we only need leaders to do this for us. Well, to this vision. Kailangan natin ng malinaw na direksyon. At ano ba ang vision ng leader na yon? Isinusulat ko na po yan doon sa aking tinatawag na rebuild. At pinakita ko pa nga po kanina doon sa mga staff ng itong sinulat ko na ito. Ako po'y nakahanda para sa ganyang pagkakataon. Marami pong salamat.
Walden Bello.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to CNN for this opportunity. Yes, I'll be ready to assume, but I really wanted problems. You know, Sara Duterte is not here. They were watching us, you know, fighting one another, and she was not here to reveal her program because she has no program for the people. All she has is this mandatory military bill that would add 2 more years sa ating mga kababayan. 18-year-olds, they're trying to get out. No? I mean, we need Sara Duterte and Marcos to come and reveal themselves to the people. No? And that is why I don't like dumping on Senator Soto or Senator Pangilinan. No? I mean, really, you know, I think the main problem that we face is the Marcos-Duterte tandem. No? And I think that they just spat on the face of the Filipino people, telling them, yeah, you're not worth my giving you our programs because they have fucking no programs. Okay? So let me just end with that. You know, if I don't care what a number of people say, but I feel very strongly about the absence of these 2 idiots in this event. Thank you, CNN.
Candidates, we would like to thank you for your very generous time and for revealing to the Filipino people, sa buong sambayanan, ang inyong plataforma at programa kung kayo ang magiging vice-presidente ng Pilipinas. And after any debate, people often ask, who won? Who stood out? And who is the most qualified? So tell us what you think via the CNN Philippines digital platforms.
At marami na nga tayong reactions ngayon sa Twitter and Facebook. So to our audience, keep them coming. We want to hear from you. Alam mo, Rico, kasi yung mga ganitong debate, magandang pagkakataon talaga ito para makilala ang ating mga kandidato at marinig silang lahat. And again, we want to thank our candidates.
And gusto rin natin pasalamatan ang ating virtual audience who joined us for this Vice Presidential Debate 2022.
And of course, thank you very much to our host, the University of Santo Tomas.
Maraming salamat po.
Let's call in our candidates in alphabetical order. Former Akbayan. And Bello, please join us.
Senator Francis Kiko.
Lawyer Carlos Serapio.
And Senate President Tito Soto.
Maraming salamat po sa ating mga kandidato. Ako po si Ruth Cabal.
And I am Rico Hizon. Join us again tomorrow where 9 out of the 10 presidential candidates will be here, right here on the stage at the Quadricentennial Pavilion at the University of Santo Tomas to answer your questions. 5 to 7 p.m. Thank you for watching this CNN Philippines special presentation.
The Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022.